There's nothing around, just the eternal, endless whiteness of Greenland's snow and cold winds blowing into your face. Nothing hints at the impending catastrophe. You take another step and freeze in horror. An abyss is spreading at your feet, bottomless and dark. If you had made a bigger step, it would have swallowed you. That infamous Greenland's hole. It happened in the middle of the 2010s. A group of geologists were scanning the surface of Greenland's Hiawatha Glacier using radar when they spotted something very, very strange. It was a giant pit, more than 980 feet deep and almost 20 miles wide. That's big enough to fit inside Washington, D.C. or Paris. After staring at their radars for quite a while and scratching their heads, researchers decided to find out what could have made such a huge hole. Could it have been good old erosion? A raging volcano? An asteroid impact? A giant sandworm? I might have gone a bit overboard with this worm idea, but you never know with these ancient glaciers. Anyway, in our case, one mystery seemed to lead to another, which had been puzzling scientists for decades. And to solve both of them, scientists needed something super common, but at the same time very important: quartz, one of the most abundant materials in Earth's crust. But before we dig deeper into this topic, let's make a small detour and talk about a pretty bizarre phenomenon called the Younger Dryas event. To see what it was like, we need to go deep into the past, as far back as 12,900 to 11,600 years ago. During that period, the planet became much colder, especially in Europe and North America. Now, let's talk a bit more about that weird climate change in the Northern Hemisphere. There are a few theories. One that involves a change in currents in the Atlantic Ocean. Another speaks about something large kicking tons of dust into the air and effectively blocking sunlight. The two most popular and likely hypotheses mention a volcanic eruption and an asteroid impact. Indeed, there was a volcanic eruption on the territory of modern-day Germany at around the right time. But there's also a probability that a space object struck the planet during this period too. And now let's get back to the hole scientists found in Greenland. When NASA's Ice Bridge program and Germany's Alfred Wegener Institute discovered it, it seemed they had finally found the reason for the Younger Dryas event. But was it really an asteroid that created that impressive pit and caused temperatures to drop all over the Northern Hemisphere? To test this theory, the researchers needed quartz. The thing is, in its pure form, quartz has a very simple structure. It's made from interlocking silicon-oxygen tetrahedra. Efficient and so pretty. Just look at these six-sided prismatic crystals. Since its structure is so simple and the components are so common, you can find quartz almost in any rock on the planet. At one point, magic happens. Larger rocks erode away, pushing out tiny bits of quartz sand. The scientists exploring the mysterious pit gathered the quartz sand that had been washed out from underneath the glacier. It was like looking at the rocks at the very bottom of the hole without having to actually get all the way down there. Very handy. So while examining the material, they discovered quartz grains with the telltale signs of terrible catastrophe. They had PDFs all over them. No, I'm not talking about the document format. PDFs stand for planar deformation features, and they look like lines etched into the crystal surface. These lines are a sign that you're holding shocked quartz. It forms under immense pressure, when the internal crystals are pushed out of alignment. But the most exciting thing here is that shocked quartz only appears under the influence of powerful forces, like massive impacts or terrifying explosions. In other words, finding this poor shocked quartz under the Hiawatha Glacier could be much needed proof that the hole was an enormous impact crater that formed when something equally enormous crash-landed there. Based on the size of the crater, this space object probably was a bit more than a mile across, which is twice the height of the Burj Khalifa Tower in Dubai. A meteorite that big would have looked 3 times as bright as the sun when traveling across the sky, and it would have hit Earth with an immense force. The impact would have been so great it'd have vaporized rock and thrown debris for hundreds of miles away. The sky would have filled with dust. It would have dimmed the sun and led to a temperature drop all over the planet. And guess what? The last part about decreasing temperatures got the researchers super excited, because it opened up a possibility that the impact could have been connected to the Younger Dryas event. To prove this idea, scientists decided to use quartz again. They examined it more closely, trying to date the impact. Well, they were in for an even greater shock. The Hiawatha crater turned out to be not 12,000, but 58 million years old. On the other hand, the researchers were disappointed that they hadn't been able to confirm their theory. The crater couldn't explain the Younger Dryas cold snap, but on the other hand, it was still an amazing discovery. Now, get ready for one final twist to this story, and it revolves around quartz again. Other scientists have recently discovered more deposits of shocked quartz all over what is now the eastern USA. It was hiding in sediment layers dating to just before the Younger Dryas. Interestingly, there aren't any craters around those sites whatsoever. But quartz can't lie. It provides evidence of a powerful explosion. It makes scientists think that their impact hypothesis might still be true, but instead of a collision, it could be an airburst. A massive comet could have broken up while entering Earth's atmosphere around 12,000 years ago, and the fragments could have exploded before reaching the ground. It would have caused catastrophic mass burning throughout the North American continent and messed with the climate so much that the Younger Dryas would have been triggered. Well, I guess we need to wait a bit longer for scientists to find some further proof of this hypothesis. But it doesn't mean we don't have any more curious phenomena to explore in Greenland. Take these fascinating holes. They sure are kinda smaller than the monster we were talking about. They're called moulins, and they carry surface meltwater all the way down to the base of the Greenland ice sheet. And they have prepared some surprises for us too. Apparently, they're way larger than we previously thought. That's what a recent study based on observation and first-hand exploration claims. Even more interesting, this high volume might influence the stability of the ginormous ice sheet in question, as well as the speed at which it's sliding towards the sea. Researchers think that increased water depth and pressure inside moulins might lubricate the base of the ice sheet, making it move faster. You know, the way an ice cube slides more easily on a thin film of melted water. Until recently, we knew too little about the real size of moulins and how much water they can hold. But now, we know that moulins can be giant. The team made 2 trips to the Greenland ice sheet in 2018 and 2019. And during each of them, they used ropes and climbing equipment to drop around 330 feet into 2 separate moulins, almost touching the water's surface. Those who did it described the experience as intimidating. Picture this. Your back is over the edge. All you see is bluish ice going down and blurring into blackness. And the only thing you hear is occasional sounds of crashing ice. It must be extremely unnerving.
And we have liftoff of Mars Global Surveyor as America begins its journey back to the Red Planet.
There's a weird structure on Mars, a square, a near-perfect square standing alone in the endless red desert. And it looks too perfect, too precise to be anything but artificial. Nature's chaotic, and it rarely makes things look so deliberate. So the internet took one look at it and lost its mind, as the internet tends to do. The image spread like a virus on social media, igniting every conspiracy theory you can think of. Some were convinced it was proof that intelligent life had once tread upon the Martian sands. Well, let's dive in and sort it out. The image is real, and it's really old. The thing, not the picture. NASA's Mars Orbiter camera snapped it in 2001, capturing a tiny slice of Martian terrain, and there sat the square. Now, is that evidence for intelligent life? Well, Mars is an empty world now, a rust-colored desert. But once, long ago, it may have been something else entirely. A planet filled with roaring rivers, vast oceans, and thick clouds rolling across the sky. Now, in a world like that, life, if it ever had a chance, could have taken root. And there's a possibility it did. Scientists think that life could have existed on Mars in a short period from around 4.1 to 3 billion years ago. It could have started during the early era of Martian history, called the Noachian period, and lasted all the way to the late Hesperian period. Meanwhile, here on Earth, the first oceans were just forming. Life on our planet was just beginning, in the form of tiny bacteria in deep-sea hydrothermal vents. While Mars was already fully wet, on Earth, there were no plants or animals, just microscopic life trying to survive. So, Mars took the lead in the life game. It had a much thicker atmosphere, which could have trapped enough heat to keep water liquid. Valley networks, huge traces across the red landscape, show us the incredible story of rainfall, rivers, and lakes. Huge asteroids were still hitting Mars at the time, and they could have brought organic molecules with them. But if that's true, what happened and where did life go? A recent NASA study suggests that the answer is more complicated than we thought. Astronomers believe that something drastic happened to Mars, like boom, and its cozy climate was gone, its atmosphere thinned. Without a strong magnetic field like Earth's to protect it, solar radiation stripped away the air, leaving Mars cold and dry. The ocean simply evaporated. Some of the water escaped into space while the rest froze underground or became locked in polar ice caps. Today, all that remains is a ghostly memory, dry channels and salty mineral deposits. But it looks like the transition wasn't sudden at all. It was slow and gradual. The planet was changing from wet and warm to cold and dry over millions of years. In fact, Mars kept its ocean even after the temperatures dropped to freezing. Some parts of Mars, especially the northern lowlands, might have remained wet for many, many centuries. Shouldn't the water freeze when it gets below 32 degrees Fahrenheit? Well, yeah. But there are many reasons why this miracle happened, like Mars's thick atmosphere and warm water traveling through currents. And during that time we mentioned before, from Noachian to the late Hesperian, life could have found a way. Microbes on Earth thrive in some of the harshest places, beneath Antarctic ice, in deep sea vents, in toxic volcanic lakes. Hey, life doesn't care. So these times in Martian history would be amazing for it. But don't be mistaken, Mars was never a paradise. Even during its cozy times, it wasn't as lush and green as we might imagine. In its early days, Mars was something more extreme, something closer to the young Earth. During the Noachian period, it was warm yet wet. Then, the climate shifted into the Hesperian period. Oceans were stretching across the northern lowlands. Temperatures dropped, and snow piled high, forming massive glaciers in the south, transforming the planet into an icy world. Finding microscopic life at that time is possible, but an intelligent civilization? That's less likely. The square that went viral isn't evidence for intelligent life yet, and here's why. First things first, people freak out because nature doesn't make straight lines. But that's not really true. Actually, nature does it all the time. For example, here on Earth, we have the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, a beautiful field of hexagonal basalt columns. These are completely natural. They're formed by volcanic activity. There's also the Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Hey, remember it from the Close Encounters movie in the 80s? That's a symmetrical rock formation, and it was created by erosion. However, if we looked at these things from space, they'd look artificial. So, what is the square? How about a fracture pattern in the rock or some terrain that's broken apart along straight lines due to stress? This happens on Earth all the time when rock expands and contracts over time. And on Mars, the surface is just constantly battered by meteors, winds, and extreme temperature shifts. No wonder rock would get stressed. What happens here is another case of pareidolia. It's our brain's favorite thing, to spot patterns in something random. Hey, we evolved like this. So sometimes we might look at natural objects and see insane stuff, faces on trees, animals and clouds, shapes, and so on. Besides, NASA has been photographing Mars for decades. We have high-resolution images of craters, mountains, valleys, riverbeds, everything. Wouldn't an ancient civilization leave us, well, something better than some square-like rock? Even though things erode over time, we'd find more signs, roads, foundations, artifacts, ruins, or at least something. Though, to be fair, we do see something. The square wouldn't be the first time Mars has played tricks on us. Over the years, we've spotted everything from tunnels to carved faces, even Bigfoot. Or this doorway, for example, a perfectly cut rectangular opening. That's what people saw when NASA's Curiosity rover sent back an image of the East Cliffs on Mount Sharp. It's almost like an ancient passage leading deep into the surface. You just need to go in and find some fantastic underground base. Well, NASA decided to take a closer look at it. It turns out it's just 12 inches tall and 16 inches wide, the size of a dog door. That's because what we're looking at isn't a doorway, but an open fracture, a break in the rock that happens naturally over time. These kinds of cracks are extremely common, both on Earth and on Mars. They form when bedrock is stressed, expands, contracts, or gets eroded by wind and time. If you walk through a desert here on Earth, you'd see plenty of similar shapes. Canyons, cliffs, and even boulders have fractures that, from the right angle, might look like doorways. They're just not getting photographed by NASA. Also, the straightness of lines turns out to be just a trick of perspective. If you zoom out, you'll see that it's just one small break in a much bigger rock formation. Or the infamous Cydonia face. The photo was taken back in 1976 by NASA's Viking 1 orbiter when it was scanning Mars. In the region known as Cydonia, it captured what looked like a massive humanoid face, a rocky formation about 1.2 miles long. And this one face inspired books, documentaries, movies, and podcasts. But when NASA's Viking orbiters first took pictures of Cydonia, the cameras weren't super advanced. The image of the face had a low resolution and made the details fuzzy. NASA's later missions had far better cameras, and when Mars Global Surveyor revisited Cydonia in 2001, the truth was undeniable. The face was just a hill, a lumpy rock formation with ridges and depressions carved by wind and erosion. And in 2006, during another mission, a colored image with insanely high detail was made. No traces of face left there whatsoever. That's another pareidolia trick for you. Now, Mars has plenty of secrets left to uncover, but they will be related to its fascinating history, not some secret ancient civilization. The conclusion is, don't trust everything you see online. Sometimes a mysterious rock is just a rock.
NASA sent a spacecraft right into the Sun. It's the fastest human-made object ever, and could cover the distance from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. in just 1 second. The Parker Solar Probe's mission is to study our star's dangerous behavior. Scientists warn that massive solar storms are inevitable, and the consequences could be catastrophic for our planet. The spacecraft got 7 times closer to the Sun than any other probe ever did. It managed to do so during its 20-second flyby to the star since its launch in 2018. Because our star is so massive, its gravity is really strong, like a giant magnet. As the probe flies around the Sun, it uses gravity to go faster and faster and eventually picks up that crazy speed. As it got closer and closer to the Sun's corona, which is its outer atmosphere, the probe had to survive temperatures of 2,552 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to melt many metals. It was protected from that heat and radiation by a 4.5-inch thick carbon shield. It kept the tools inside the probe safe and running at around room temperature. The scientists went to all this effort because they're hoping to solve a big mystery about the Sun that's been puzzling them for ages. The surface of our main star is already super hot, but as you move closer out to the corona, the temperature shoots up to millions of degrees. And it doesn't make any sense because it's farther away from the sun. So maybe we could finally get some answers about this heat phenomenon. The mission is also going to help us understand something called solar wind. The sun is constantly shooting out tiny bits of energy and charged particles into space, like a never-ending breeze of electricity. When this solar wind hits Earth, it can create amazing light shows in the sky called auroras. The more active the sun is, the farther south you can see auroras. Our star follows natural cycles that last about 11 years. The activity goes from low to high and back down to low. Right now, we're in the solar maximum, the peak of the activity cycle. That's why we've spotted beautiful auroras in the most unexpected places in 2024. The downside to it is that the sun's activity can send out bursts of energy and charged particles that can mess up things like radios, satellites, and even GPS. It can be dangerous, especially for astronauts out in space who aren't as protected as we are here on Earth. Humans wouldn't feel the compression of the planet's electromagnetic field because of all the extra radiation, but power grids are really sensitive to it. If we don't act fast, when it happens, the influx of energy will go into power transformers all over the world, disrupt them, and leave big areas without electricity. If this happens during a hurricane or a tornado, when communication is already super important, it could make it much harder for emergency services to communicate and save lives. That's why it's so important to learn to predict this space weather. It's tricky because, unlike most disasters, like earthquakes, floods, and volcanoes, it doesn't leave behind any kind of physical evidence. The only big solar storms we really know about happened in 1859 and 1921. The first one, called the Carrington event, was so wild that it made sparks fly from telegraph wires. The auroras were seen all the way near the equator. Scientists back then were using a special kind of paper that reacted to light to record solar activity. During the Carrington event, the reading from the sun went off the page, literally. Whatever was happening, it was so extreme that we still don't fully understand it. Then, there was the New York Railroad Storm of 1921. It was powerful enough to knock out telegraph systems across the US, Europe, and the Southern Hemisphere. The storm boosted radio transmissions for a bit, making them travel farther than usual. But back then, there weren't nearly as many radios, so it wasn't super helpful. The bigger problem was the electrical grid in the US, which was heavily damaged. Back in 1859 and 1921, people weren't as dependent on tech as we are now. If a storm like that hits today, the consequences could be way more catastrophic. Scientists from New Zealand who study space weather are working on simulations trying to prevent disasters from happening. They say one of the possible options to do it is to study other suns like ours elsewhere in space. If we get data from thousands of stars, not just one, the picture for analysis would be more complete. So far, scientists have launched or plan to launch several other missions in addition to the Parker Solar Probe. Meanwhile, NASA is working on another mission, launching Endurance, robotic moon machinery on steroids. Its main mission will be to collect samples from key lunar locations that will later be retrieved by astronauts from the Artemis program. These samples are spread across the largest impact basin on the moon, separated by hundreds of miles. To do it, Endurance will have to be way more advanced than Perseverance, NASA's current most cutting-edge rover. Endurance will drive roughly 100 times further, drive 10 times faster, and collect roughly 200 times more sample mass. Endurance would also be the first planetary rover to drive at night. And because it will be on the far side of the moon with limited communication to Earth and surface data, it will have to drive autonomously between sample locks and make its own decisions in tough conditions. When it reaches its destination, it's going to switch to a more classic way of doing things. Scientists back on Earth will get involved directly, guiding the rover to explore the sites and collect samples. The teams on Earth will also keep an eye on how the rover is doing by monitoring its telemetry. which is the data it sends back, like its health stats. If they spot any signs that a part is wearing out or something isn't working quite right, they'll tweak the plan to keep things running smoothly. All this will cost huge amounts of money, probably way more than the Viper moon mission that was cancelled after NASA had spent around $450 million on it. While Endurance is in the planning stage, the Blue Ghost lunar lander is already on its way to the moon. Its main mission is research. It will spend 25 days in Earth's orbit, taking measurements and waiting for the right time to fling itself to the moon. After 4 days in transit, Blue Ghost will hang out in lunar orbit for another 16 days to collect more data. Then it will descend to one of the largest basins on the moon and spend 1 lunar day there. It will measure subsurface thermal data, radiation levels, and other important data. At the end of its mission, Blue Ghost will take some final pictures of the lunar sunset. It isn't designed to return back to our planet, so when the night falls, it will do some final work and go offline for good. NASA chose the team of University of Florida aerospace engineers to work on another innovative space project. It will cost $12 million, and its goal will be to improve the way we track changes in tectonic plates and oceans on Earth from space. It will use state-of-the-art sensors that will measure even the tiniest gravitational changes. The data it gets will help scientists monitor droughts, assess groundwater reserves, and better understand changes in sea levels. They expect to launch it around 2027 aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket.
We all know that space missions come with a hefty price tag. To break it down, a ticket to space for an astronaut starts at around $20 million and can soar up to $50 million. NASA may be a well-funded organization, but you can bet they're always on the lookout to cut costs and save millions wherever they can. Plus, NASA has long realized they do not need to go to Saturn's moon to study if there's life there. We already have the suitable conditions for extraterrestrial life in Wyoming. If that resonates with you, then you already understand why NASA is so interested in Yellowstone. To explore life beyond Earth, we need to study environments that mimic extraterrestrial conditions. That's where all those hot springs come into play. Now, it's not the entire park that piques NASA's interest. Let's leave the bears, moose, and other Earthlings to our local biologists. The real hot spot is the geysers, where microbial life flourishes. Oh, by the way, Yellowstone has more geysers and hot springs than the rest of the world combined. In some of them, water can reach temperatures as high as 192 degrees Fahrenheit. You might think, hey, that's only good for steeping tea. But here's the thing. Life in the form of microbes not only survives but thrives in these extreme conditions, having adapted specifically to them. So, could these microbes help us find life on other planets? Absolutely. Now, let's shine the spotlight on the real superstar, the Grand Prismatic Spring. It's packed with silica, which gives it that stunning color. Silica reflects sunlight, especially the blue wavelengths, which is why it looks so vibrant. The coolest part, though, is not the color, but the fact that this spring can teach us a lot about how life evolved. Way back around 4.5 billion years ago, I wasn't around then, living things didn't know how to harness energy from sunlight yet, so they were using chemical processes instead, just like they do now at the Grand Prismatic Spring. But why are we talking about other planets? Well, if life on Earth kicked off in a comparable way to what we see in Yellowstone, there's a good chance we could find something similar elsewhere in the universe. And if we could nail down exactly how life started here, we could really fine-tune our search for life on other planets. Geysers, very similar to those in Yellowstone, can be found on moons like Enceladus, which orbits Saturn, and Triton, which is a moon of Neptune. But how do they compare to the geysers we see in Yellowstone? Well, back in 1989, NASA's Voyager 2 spacecraft made a groundbreaking discovery when it spotted geysers on Triton. This was the first time anyone had seen a geyser outside of Earth, not counting the volcanic eruptions on Jupiter's moon, Io, that were found by Voyager 1 in 1979. Since then, more geysers have been found on other moons in our solar system. In Yellowstone, geysers are heated by hot water from deep within the Earth. However, geysers on some of the outer moons get their heat from tidal forces, the gravitational pull from the big planets they orbit. You know how ocean tides on Earth are affected by the moon and the sun? Well, these moons experience something similar, but on a much larger scale. Beneath the icy surfaces of these moons are warm, salty oceans that stay liquid because the thick ice above keeps them insulated. As the moons move closer and further from their parent planets, the constant tugging creates heat, causing the warm water below to shoot out into space whenever there's a crack in the ice. This icy crust and the warm water underneath are a bit like a frozen pond on Earth. But could there be life swimming around in these hidden oceans, just like there are critters thriving beneath the ice of a pond? That's something scientists want to find out. NASA hopes to send advanced spacecraft to explore these distant moons and look for signs of life. But those warm oceans are buried miles beneath the frozen surface. So, how do we reach them? The answer may lie in geysers. In February 2019, a group of planetary scientists decided to visit Yellowstone in the winter to study the similarities between Earth's geysers and those in space. They know that Yellowstone's geysers are home to some tough little microbes called extremophiles, which thrive in extreme conditions like hot or acidic water. The researchers wanted to learn as much as they could about these microbes and the environments they live in. They brought along a bunch of scientific tools to measure things like temperature, pH levels, and oxygen in the water. They also used special instruments to analyze the chemicals in the ice and rocks and sniff the air for gases. Plus, they collected samples of rock, ice, and water from the geysers, catching tiny droplets on sheets of foil coated in geyser spray. Their main target was the Great Fountain Geyser in Yellowstone's Midway Geyser Basin, which puts on a spectacular show 2 to 3 times a day. However, visiting in winter posed some challenges. Some scientists were delayed by snowy weather, arriving late at night right before they were supposed to enter the park. Then their SUV got stuck in a snowdrift and had to be rescued by a snowplow. The next day, riding in a snow coach, the team had to trudge through deep snow for nearly a mile to reach the geyser, keeping an eye out for elk, bison, and even bears. As they made their way to the Great Fountain Geyser, they took breaks to gather samples and measurements from other interesting pools along the way, like Lemon Pool and Surprise Pool. Even though Yellowstone feels remote, it's not nearly as far away as places like Enceladus and Triton. It's a unique natural laboratory that can teach us a lot about life on Earth and potentially beyond. Oh, as for labs, the Great Prismatic Spring may count as one. Look at these guys. Under the microscope, they look like matches. Their official Latin name is Thermus aquaticus. They live in this hot spring, and these bacteria have saved millions of people's lives. Now, if you're skeptical about what I just said, then you need to know that these bacteria help to create the basis of PCR tests widely used in today's medicine to give fast and precise diagnosis. Back in the 60s, a microbiologist named Thomas Brock was exploring the park's superheated thermal pools and stumbled upon something amazing. Brock was super interested in bacteria that could thrive in extreme conditions. During his 10-year journey studying geysers and thermal springs, he found a microbe in a spring called Mushroom Pool that could survive in nearly boiling water. This little guy, Thermus aquaticus, turned out to be a game changer for science. Why? Well, it's crucial for a technique called PCR, also known as polymerase chain reaction, which is used to quickly make copies of DNA samples. Before Brock's discovery, this process was tricky because the heat could damage the enzymes that hold DNA together. But thanks to Thermus aquaticus, scientists could now heat and cool DNA samples without breaking them down, making everything faster and easier. It all happened because researchers had purified an enzyme called tag polymerase out of this organism. Those Yellowstone microbes could also be your new go-to for a delicious and sustainable breakfast. A unique microbe was discovered there during some NASA-funded research. and it's now being transformed into tasty vegan breakfast patties and cream cheese. Originally found in a hot spring, this little wonder is called Fusarium strange flavolapsus, and it caught the attention of space enthusiasts as a powerful protein source for long space missions. Plus, it requires way less water and land than beef, making it a smart choice for the planet. Researchers initially looked at this microbe for biofuel, but soon realized it could be cultivated into a complete protein with a texture reminiscent of chicken. Marked as FY, it can be turned into a variety of food products, all thanks to a fermentation process that keeps it free from contaminants. Oh, almost forgot. NASA is even working on a bioreactor to grow FY in space. Ooh, stay tuned.
It was supposed to be an easy 8-day-long mission. 2 NASA astronauts couldn't even imagine they would get stranded in space for at least 9 months. Their task was to test a brand new spacecraft, Starliner. They were hoping to return it to Earth as soon as possible so engineers could check it out and send it on a new flight. But from the very start, it didn't go as planned for Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams, experienced astronauts who had both been to the International Space Station before. They were supposed to depart on the 6th of May, 2024, but had to postpone departure for 1 month because of a leaky valve in the upper stage of their rocket. When they finally took off on the 5th of June, new problems started before they even got to the station. There were failures in some of their thrusters and, later, leaks in the gaseous helium. It's important because it keeps the thrusters pressurized. Boeing, who built the new spacecraft, and NASA focused on solving those problems and figured out it wasn't safe for the astronauts to fly back home on the Starliner. They didn't just leave them on the ISS, of course. NASA came up with a plan where Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams would come back home on a SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft. It took off in September of the same year with 2 empty seats out of a total of 4. The only problem is that it wasn't supposed to come back until February 2025 at the earliest. In a press conference from the International Space Station, Wilmore and Williams admitted it was heartbreaking to watch their spacecraft depart without them, but they were trained to expect the unexpected. They keep receiving messages of support from Earth, and they aren't at all sad to spend more time in space, as they say it's their happy place. Mr. Wilmore gets up every day at 4:30 in the morning, and Miss Williams at 6:30. They do at least 2 hours of exercise at the space gym every day to reduce the loss of bone density. Another big problem is sleeping in space. The space station has 6 tiny sleep pods, each about the size of a phone booth. Inside, there's a sleeping bag, a little storage area for snacks and personal stuff, and even 2 laptops attached to the walls with bungee cords. The pods aren't completely soundproof, so astronauts sometimes wear headphones to listen to music or calming sounds from Earth to help them fall asleep. But here's the problem. There are more astronauts than sleep pods, so 3 astronauts have to find other places to sleep. One of them sleeps in a simple backup sleep chamber inside the European Space Agency's Columbus lab. Butch Wilmore is roughing it in just a sleeping bag inside the Japanese Space Agency's lab. When they planned this mission, Butch was only supposed to sleep like that for 8 days, which didn't sound that terrible. Another problem they had to deal with was that they didn't pack enough clothes for several months. So, astronauts had to savor what they brought for the first 2 months until a resupply vehicle delivered fresh outfits, along with hardware, fruits, and vegetables. The astronauts have a super packed schedule that's managed by a computer tablet. It tells them what tasks to do, when to take breaks, and even when to eat, all in 15-minute chunks. A little red line on the tablet moves through the day in real time, showing them if they're on track or running behind. At first, Butch and Williams were working on the Starliner spacecraft, testing all its systems like communications, life support, and power. Once they finished that checklist, they started helping the other crew members with science experiments and maintenance tasks. The best-case scenario is now a late March return, And if it actually happens, the Starliner crew will spend over 270 days in space. An average mission on the ISS lasts around 6 months, so it's already way longer, but not close to the record time. The current American record belongs to astronaut Frank Rubio, who stayed in space for 371 days in a row. He lived on the International Space Station from September 2022 to September 2023. When Frank first went to space, the plan was for him to stay there for about 6 months, but it didn't go as planned. In December 2022, a meteoroid, or maybe a piece of broken satellite junk, crashed into the spaceship that was supposed to bring him and his 2 crewmates home. The spaceship was damaged so badly that it wasn't safe to use anymore. The 2 astronauts who were on that spaceship also had to stay on the ISS with Frank for 6 extra months until another spaceship went to space and rescued them. During his mission, Frank Rubio zoomed around Earth about 5,936 times. Altogether, he traveled a distance of 157 million miles. It's like going to the moon and back 328 times. Frank also went on 3 spacewalks and spent 21 hours outside the space station. One of Frank's big jobs was to do scientific experiments. He studied how bacteria behave in space, where there's no gravity pulling things down like on Earth. But his favorite experiment was taking care of a tiny tomato plant and watching it grow. Frank admitted that being away from his family for so long was really hard, but it's not the only possible hardship on such an extended space stay. Space agencies have entire departments that study the effects of space on the human body. In one of the studies, called Twins, scientists compared 2 identical twin brothers, Scott Kelly and Mark Kelly. They're both astronauts, but for this study, Scott spent a year on the ISS and Mark stayed on Earth. By comparing them, scientists could figure out how space changed Scott's body compared to his twin. He said it took him at least 6 months to feel like his usual self again after coming back to Earth. Scientists noticed predictable weight loss and bone mass loss, but they didn't expect to see changes in his DNA. They found that his telomeres, which are like tiny protective caps at the ends of DNA strands, got longer while he was in space. But sometime after he got back, he had more short telomeres than before. It looks like the damage was permanent. It must have to do with radiation, which is one of the biggest dangers for astronauts who stay in space for a long time. It can damage DNA, and that can increase the risk of some really serious health problems. Astronauts need protection from radiation, not just while they're flying in space, but also if they live on the moon or Mars someday. Scientists are working hard to find ways to keep astronauts safe from this invisible danger. Every space agency has rules about how much radiation astronauts can safely handle during their careers. Another big problem astronauts face is bone demineralization. It happens because there's no gravity in space pulling on their bones like there is on Earth. Without that pressure, their bones start losing minerals like calcium, which makes them weaker. Astronauts can lose about 1 to 1.5% of their bone density every month they're in space. When calcium from the bones gets into the body's waste system, it can lead to kidney stones. Because of these changes, astronauts coming back from space need time to recover. Another challenge in space is how the body's fluids, like blood, behave. On Earth, gravity keeps most fluids lower in your body, but in space, they float upward. This extra fluid in the head can push on the eyes, which might change how astronauts see. Some even develop a condition that can make it hard to focus their eyes, and sometimes the changes in vision can be permanent. When astronauts who spend a longer time in space, like Williams and Wilmore, return to Earth, doctors keep a close eye on their health with regular checkups. Scientists expect that their condition is going to be like that of 6-month astronauts.
A huge asteroid, several hundred feet across, is dashing towards Earth through the black nothingness of the cosmos. Ooh. Brace for the terrible news. There's a 72% chance it might hit Earth in 14 years, with potential impact zones being North America, Southern Europe, and North Africa, some of the most densely populated areas on the planet. Astronomers have been keeping a close eye on the space invader for a few months, but now it's moved too close to the Sun, and tracking it is impossible for the next 7 months. Of course, there's a 28% chance that it will miss our planet altogether. But what if it doesn't? Global devastation and destruction, that's what. Thousands of lives lost, billions and billions of dollars in damage, entire species wiped off the face of the Earth, ruined cities and towns, destroyed fields and forests. We're left wondering whether it's the future awaiting for us. Well, now you can breathe easy. That's just a hypothetical scenario created by NASA to prepare for a situation like this. The space agency has been thinking about this kind of disaster for years. Even cooler, they run what-if asteroid exercises every 2 years to get scientists, state agencies, and international experts on the same page. The last one occurred in April. Over 100 people took part in that event. During such asteroid drills, experts pretend that a giant space rock is heading our way. Then they work through all the tricky questions they can come up with, like how big is it? Where might it hit? What should we do? It's like a massive brainstorming session to make sure that if it ever happens, we won't have to start from scratch. To make these scenarios feel as real as possible, NASA's Center for Near-Earth Object Studies gets involved. These are folks who track real asteroids and calculate their orbits. So they simulate months of asteroid observations, complete with uncertainties about its size, trajectory, and potential impact zones. It's the kind of uncertainty that makes decision-making way harder, just like it would be in real life. Now, if an astronaut really was aiming at Earth, it wouldn't be just one country's problem. It would be everyone's. That's why this exercise brings in international experts. In April, it happened for the first time. They worked alongside U.S. agencies like NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office and FEMA to understand how the world might respond to such a crisis, since an asteroid impact would have dire consequences globally. Now, the big question is, can we actually stop an asteroid from hitting Earth? Here, there are two main options experts consider. First, we could send a spacecraft to gather more info. If we knew more about the asteroid's size, mass, and orbit, we'd be able to make better decisions about what to do next. The second option is to try to deflect it. Basically, it means bumping the asteroid off its course so that it misses Earth. This might sound impossible, but NASA's DART mission has already proven that we can do it. 2 years ago, they crashed a spacecraft into a small asteroid called Dimorphos and successfully changed its orbit. It was a huge victory for planetary defense. But missions like that take tons of time to plan, prepare, and carry out. That's why spotting dangerous asteroids as early as possible is so important. Currently, NASA is working on a new telescope called NEO-Surveyor, which is set to launch in 2027. Unlike good old telescopes, NEO-Surveyor is designed to detect even the trickiest asteroids, including ones orbiting close to the Sun. It'll give us a better chance to act early and potentially stop an asteroid before it becomes a threat. If you still think that an asteroid impact is something out of science fiction and the threat isn't real, how about this? Early on Sunday, January 21st, a small asteroid about 3 feet wide entered Earth's atmosphere and luckily burned up over Germany. NASA's Scout Impact System spotted it 95 minutes before it hit and predicted exactly when and where it would arrive. At 1:32 a.m. local time, the asteroid turned into a blazing bright fireball, visible as far away as the Czech Republic. Some small meteorites might have landed near the impact site, about 37 miles west of Berlin. This is just the 8th time ever that an asteroid has been detected before it hit Earth. It's a splendid example of how tools like Scout are helping us track asteroids and prepare for anything bigger that might come our way. Here's another example. A small asteroid turned the skies over northeastern Siberia into a breathtaking light show on December the 4th, burning up harmlessly in Earth's atmosphere. The space rock, about 28 inches across, was spotted just hours before it hit. Thanks to observations from astronomers around the world, a special alert system managed to predict the impact to plus or minus 10 seconds. The asteroid entered Earth's atmosphere at 1:15 a.m. local time. The authorities were put on alert, but there was no damage reports. NASA's Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, or ATLAS, spotted the rock 12 hours before it entered the atmosphere. This makes it the fourth imminent impactor, which is an asteroid discovered within hours of its expected impact, detected this year, and the 11th overall. Now, China also has big plans for planetary defense. They're working on their first mission to hit an asteroid, and it's got a double purpose. One spacecraft will crash into the asteroid, and the other will hang back to study the whole thing for up to a year. In other words, it's not just about protecting Earth, it's also a way to learn more about the solar system. The target is an asteroid called 2015 XF261, which is a mouthful, and also about 100 feet wide. It flew by Earth recently on July 9, passing us at 31 million miles. True, it's pretty far away, but the space traveler was zooming by at a speed of 26,000 miles per hour, 30 times faster than the speed of sound. China is going to send a space probe to study the asteroid. They're hoping to learn more about its structure and composition, which could help us with future planetary defense missions. Then they plan to hit the asteroid with another spacecraft to test the impact, and the first space probe will stay there to observe the remains for up to a year. Timing is critical for this mission, and the asteroid offers some good opportunities in the next few years. Thus, in March and May of 2027, the asteroid will pass within 20 million miles of Earth. In April 2028, it'll get even closer. By that I mean 13 million miles away. A year later, in April 2029, the asteroid will end up just 4.2 million miles away, making it the best shot for a mission. Another decent chance will be April 2030. That's when the asteroid will pass our planet at 4.4 million miles. To give you some context, NASA's DART mission once targeted an asteroid 7 million miles away, and the trip took 10 months. So China's planners have to pick the right moment, depending on how long their spacecraft will need to get there. The mission is expected to start around 2027. At the same time, this won't be China's first attempt to target an asteroid. Back in 2023, they were planning a planetary defense test with a different asteroid, which is also about 100 feet wide. It's not clear why they switched to the current one, probably because the timing works better. Most asteroids are basically time capsules from 4.6 billion years ago, leftovers from when the solar system was just forming. Studying them could tell us a lot about how planets, including Earth, came to be. So, China's taking on something that combines planetary defense and pure space science. They're definitely making big moves in the space exploration game.
NASA has recently revealed some eerie cosmic sounds that go against the popular misconception about the muteness of space. This discovery proves once again that the universe is far from silent. The revelation came from the Perseus galaxy cluster, located 250 million light-years away from Earth. There, NASA uncovered an unworldly howling coming from the supermassive black hole at its center. This discovery isn't super fresh. It was made in 2003. It marked the first time scientists detected an acoustic phenomenon from such a distant source. Sadly, the sound was not something you would be able to hear. Its frequency was just too low for the human ear to register. The lowest pitch the human ear can perceive is 20 Hz, 20 cycles per second. But the sound emitted by the black hole is a B-flat, 57 octaves below middle C, with a frequency of 10 million years. But NASA brought it to the realm of human hearing in 2022, turning that invisible sound into something you could actually experience. It was a breakthrough of cosmic proportions when NASA revealed that sound waves could travel through space, specifically through the medium of the Perseus galaxy cluster. This medium is a hot, dense gas, something far more substantial than the empty vacuum between galaxies. That's how sound waves manage to travel there. Those sound waves produced by the supermassive black hole at the center of Perseus resonate through the hot gas as ripples. It's like how sound travels through water here on Earth. The thing is, space is indeed a vacuum, which means that sound cannot travel through it, in the traditional sense. But the gas surrounding the black hole in Perseus provided the perfect environment for sound to travel. The black hole's powerful jets create ripples, sending vibrations through the gas. And NASA scientists have identified those vibrations as a type of cosmic sound. Previously, it was totally invisible and unhearable, but now, for the first time, astronomers have helped it to take a form humans can hear. To give us a sense of how deep this sound is, NASA raised its pitch by 57 octaves so that it could finally be audible to the human ear. The result is a haunting, bass-heavy hum. It feels as though it is resonating from the very core of space itself. What NASA did is called sonification. This process involves mapping the characteristics of the data to audible sound. As a result, we can experience something that is otherwise beyond our perception. See those brighter areas of the cluster? They produce louder and higher-pitched tones. The sonification of the Perseus black hole isn't just a scientific discovery. It has allowed us to see, or should I say, hear, the universe in a completely different way. NASA has used this technique on several different space objects, including stars, nebulae, and galaxies, giving us a glimpse into the various ways space can sound. One of the coolest NASA's sonifications is Cassiopeia A. It's the remains of a star spotted as a supernova more than 300 years ago. Located around 10,000 light-years away from Earth, this shattered remnant of a once massive star has a neutron star at its core. And it's the youngest neutron star in our galaxy that we know about. To perform the sonification of Cassiopeia A, NASA took the data captured by the Chandra X-ray Observatory and translated it into sound. Starting at the center, a triangle-shaped tone marks the location of the neutron star. Then, the sound spreads outward, which represents the expanding debris field. That's when the pitch rises and the tones become brighter. The sound grows louder and seems to mirror the outbursts of the supernova and the formation of new elements. The Tarantula Nebula, located in the Large Magellanic Cloud, is a hotbed of star formation and one of the most active regions in the universe. Astronomers have been studying this nebula for a long time to learn more about how stars are born and evolve. So, no wonder that NASA scientists have been doing their best to translate the data from the nebula into sound. They've been mapping brightness and pitch to various features in the nebula. So, airy, synthesizer-like tones represent the chaotic and hot gases surrounding the most massive stars. And the cooler gases that are forming new stars have soft, low notes. Piano-like tones correspond to the brightest stars. And the central cluster of stars sounds like a rain stick. Interestingly, NASA's investigation into the sounds of space doesn't just involve cosmic phenomena. It's also based on the experiences of astronauts, and some of them are truly eerie. After all, space exploration is always filled with unexpected surprises, and sometimes those surprises come in the form of strange noises aboard spacecraft. One such incident occurred aboard the International Space Station, when astronaut Butch Wilmore reported hearing a strange noise coming from Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. By that time, this spaceship had been docked at the station for almost 3 months. The Starliner had just completed an 8-day mission that went awry. The technical issues have been plaguing the spacecraft ever since. Wilmore described the sound as a pulsing noise, similar to a sonar ping. It was coming through the spacecraft's speaker system. This strange noise made Wilmore contact NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. Of course, Mission Control immediately began investigating. They were able to listen to the audio inside the Starliner. Wilmore even held his microphone up to the speaker so that NASA could hear it more clearly. The people in charge of the investigation finally identified the source of the noise. They announced there was an audio configuration issue with the ISS's complex communication system. The thing is, this system connects numerous spacecraft and modules, and such configurations can sometimes lead to strange noises. NASA reassured everyone that such an issue wasn't really unusual. At the same time, they encourage astronauts to report any unexpected sounds they come across. At the same time, this incident was just another proof of how tricky it is to maintain advanced spacecraft systems in orbit. The Starliner had already faced serious delays and setbacks, and every new issue added extra pressure. Everyone was worried about the spacecraft's safe return to Earth. In any case, it's not the only incident involving eerie space sounds. In 1969, during the Apollo 10 mission, astronauts heard something truly bizarre while orbiting the Moon. Now, Apollo 10 was a dry run for the historic Apollo 11 moon landing. This mission involved astronauts Thomas Stafford, John Young, and Eugene Cernan. They were testing the systems of the lunar module. Everything was going smoothly, and then they started passing behind the Moon. In that region, radio signals from Earth couldn't reach them. At that point, they all started hearing a strange, high-pitched whistling sound. It was coming through their headsets. The origin of this noise baffled the astronauts since it wasn't supposed to exist in the near vacuum of space. At first, they simply joked that it sounded like outer space music. But in reality, the situation was quite unnerving. The astronauts were on the dark side of the Moon, far away from Earth and any help. And now there was also that eerie, mysterious sound they couldn't explain. At the same time, NASA was super worried about astronauts' health and mental condition. So the crew didn't immediately report the noise to Mission Control. But after they returned to Earth, NASA engineers thoroughly investigated the phenomenon. They came to the conclusion that the sound had most likely come from the spacecraft's communications system. The reason could be the unusual circumstances of the mission. After all, the spacecraft was kinda cut off Earth. The Moon was between it and our planet. Still, even after this extensive analysis, the origin and nature of the whistle is still a great mystery for many people. Anyway, all these new discoveries and old cosmic puzzles prove that the universe is far from silent. It hums, roars, whispers, and reveals the mysteries of the cosmos one note at a time. In the future, as our technological abilities continue to evolve, NASA's work with sonification and its study of strange astronaut experiences will likely lead to even more awesome discoveries. And if we listen more closely, we may find that the universe is much more talkative than we think. On November 2nd, 2000, the first crew of astronauts arrived at the International Space Station. Almost 25 years have passed, and the ISS still remains one of the most outstanding projects created by humanity. During all this time, 280 astronauts from 23 countries have visited the station. This place has become a floating laboratory for space research where people from all over the world come together to explore our universe. The station remains a source of inspiration for writers and movie directors. This is not only one of the most important parts of the scientific field of humankind, but also an important attribute of pop culture. The station makes one circle around Earth every 90 minutes, and very soon, one of its next circles will become the last one. NASA is going to destroy the ISS. Space and science fiction fans may feel sad at this moment, but there are good reasons for such a difficult decision. The ISS, like any physical object, is not eternal, especially in the conditions of outer space. Yes, there's no oxygen, atmosphere, oxidation of materials, and air pressure, but the ISS is moving at an altitude of about 260 miles above the Earth's surface at a speed of 17,900 miles per hour, which is almost 20 times faster than the speed of sound. Also, the space around the planet is filled with debris consisting of broken satellites. And don't forget about stardust and tiny pieces of meteorites. What if something crashes into the station and blows it to pieces? Yeah, NASA is tracking the largest pieces of debris, but there are more and more of them every year. Under such conditions, the station can't serve us forever. The parts are wearing out, and the station fasteners are becoming weaker and require frequent repairs. The station was supposed to only last 15 years, but it will eventually last twice as long. In 2030, astronauts will leave the ISS, and then it will be destroyed. But how can this be done, given the size of this object? It weighs 430 tons and is the size of a football field. It is the largest object after the Moon that flies around our planet. People made 42 launches into space to construct this gigantic structure. Given its size and close location to Earth, destroying the station is a big risk. Just imagine it disintegrating into hundreds and thousands of fragments and falling to the surface of our planet. Yes, some of these chunks will burn up in the atmosphere. Others will fall into the water. But some large parts can fall on cities. It will be a devastating meteor shower. This option is too dangerous, but this is exactly what NASA is about to do. The disposal of the station will probably be a more complex operation than its creation. Of course, scientists have considered other options besides the destruction. For example, we could return all the astronauts to Earth and then send the station to a higher orbit so that it would fly there forever. However, such an operation would be too expensive. In addition, changing the orbit might not save the station from collapsing. We definitely don't need a huge piece of metal that could fall apart at any moment over our heads. That's why destroying the station is the only option. To destroy the station, scientists plan to send it to a lower Earth orbit, then carry it through the atmosphere, where some parts of the station will burn, and after that, submerge the station in a remote part of the ocean, where ships don't sail and fish don't swim. By the way, this place is called Point Nemo, and it's located in the South Pacific Ocean. This is the farthest point from land. For many years, people have been dumping space debris and failed satellites there. It's considered one of the most lifeless and loneliest places on Earth. NASA plans to drop the ISS there, but this requires very precise calculations and control. The operation can't be fulfilled without a special space tug, and this unique machine will be invented by Elon Musk's SpaceX company. Musk signed an $845 million contract with NASA. According to it, the station should be safely destroyed by 2031. And that's how this cinematic operation is going to happen. The device that will lower the ISS to Earth will be built according to the design of the SpaceX Dragon ship capsule. Scientists plan to calculate the details of the station's flight trajectory, all angles of incidence, and the speed of movement. No mistake can be made, as any miscalculation will lead to disaster. Our planet is a giant object with a powerful gravitational force that attracts other objects to itself. The ISS uses thrusters to resist this attraction and stay at the same height. So, first of all, the station will need to reduce its resistance. If necessary, it can use the engines to adjust the route. From an altitude of 260 miles, the station will descend into an orbit of 205 miles above Earth. After that, SpaceX will launch its space tug. All this will happen about a year before the scheduled date of destruction. During this time, the astronauts will fold up scientific equipment, say goodbye to the station, and return home. This sad moment will be recorded on camera and posted on the internet. After that, the whole planet will watch the dramatic finale of the ISS. The space tug will dock with the station and transport it to the lowest point of the orbit, approximately 90 miles above the surface. There, the station will experience huge air resistance. it will become increasingly difficult to control the fall. The tug must be equipped with powerful rocket engines to correct the flight. Scientists will control the shuttle, calculating the trajectory of the fall. Then, SpaceX's device will begin to push the station down. The giant space object will pass through the thickest and most dangerous layers of the atmosphere. It will burn down the station, which will be falling apart by that time. This will be a mesmerizing fire show. Some parts will burn up in the air, others will pass through the barrier. At high speed, incandescent parts will collide with the surface of the Pacific Ocean. Millions of people will be watching the last flight of the space legend on the screens of their gadgets and TVs. The water will be getting closer, and boom! Pieces of those stations will crash into the water with a deafening noise. Many smaller fragments will fall nearby. The entire station will cool down quickly and sink to the ocean floor. Mission completed. But the history of the station won't be over. Point Nemo is 2,700 miles away from the nearest land in any direction. But the best way to get to it is from Easter Island, Chile. What if rich people from all over the world flew to Chile to then travel to Point Nemo? Just imagine, covering thousands of miles just to get to the ISS crash site. People will descend in bathyscaphs to the ocean floor and take out the wreckage of the station. Someone might start selling them. Someone will keep them at home as part of a collection. Perhaps NASA will retrieve some modules of the station to put them in a museum. But what will happen once scientists finally get rid of the ISS? The space laboratory is used for research in outer space. After its destruction, research will continue, but on a grander scale. Humanity has to explore Mars, remember? For such an important mission, it's necessary to prepare astronauts in conditions close to those on the Red Planet. The Moon is the perfect place. NASA is conducting the Artemis mission. We'll explore the lunar surface, and we will go on a long journey to Mars from there. At the end of 2022, NASA launched a probe that flew beyond the Moon. The next flight will be launched with people on board. The third flight will be the first human outing on the Moon since 1972. Gradually, step by step, the agency plans to land several astronauts and space station modules on the surface of the Moon. They will build large research bases where they will prepare for the first ever human flight to Mars. By the way, would you agree to go on a dangerous journey to the Red Planet? Write your answers in the comments.
You know what? 8 out of 10 people worldwide can't see the Milky Way anymore. And in just 100 years, it might turn into a forgotten tale from the past. It's not that the galaxy is disappearing, but that the cosmos is fading from view. Back in our grandparents' day, they could look up and see this vibrant tapestry of stars. But nowadays, we're lucky if we can even count them on one hand. This has nothing to do with nature. It's all because of the creeping threat of something called light pollution. Next time you walk around a big city after dark, take a moment to notice the large number of street lights, neon billboards, and office buildings shining all night long. Those endless city lights create an artificial brightness that competes with the natural glow of the stars. This is light pollution, and it's getting worse. Every year, Earth gets 10% brighter. That means if someone is born today in an area where you can typically see around 250 stars, when they reach 18, they'll only be able to see about 100 of them. Unfortunately, that's already a problem in big cities, where looking up at the stars is becoming something that you can only do in planetariums. It's gotten to a point where, during an earthquake that knocked out the power in Los Angeles in the 90s, many residents called emergency centers to report a massive silvery cloud in the night sky. But what they were actually seeing, perhaps for the first time, was the Milky Way. When you look at Earth from space, you can see vast areas of North America, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia all lit up. Singapore, Qatar, and Kuwait are some of the most light-polluted countries. On the flip side, remote places like Siberia, the Sahara, and the Amazon rainforest are in total darkness. Light pollution shows up in many forms. First, there is glare, like when you're driving and those bright lights literally make your eyes hurt. leaving you very uncomfortable. Then there is clutter, like Times Square with its crazy mishmash of different bright lights all over the place. Light trespass is when light sneaks into places it shouldn't, like a streetlight shining right into your bedroom. And finally, there is over-illumination, which is just using way too much artificial light for no good reason, like keeping all the office lights on throughout the night when no one is even there. All these forms of light pollution aren't just stealing the beauty of the night sky, they're also interfering with astronomical studies. When we rely too heavily on artificial lights, it messes up the work of Earth-based telescopes. And when that equipment can't do their job properly, we end up needing even more expensive space telescopes like Hubble and James Webb. And let's face it, that costs us billions. Turning night into day actually affects all of us, not just astronomers. Nighttime light messes with our sleep schedule and our body's internal clock. This clock keeps things like brain activity, hormone levels, and cell functions on track. So when it's disrupted, it can lead to serious issues like depression, insomnia, heart problems, or worse. One key process that gets messed up is the production of melatonin, a hormone that kicks in when it's dark. Too much light at night lowers melatonin levels, leading to stress, anxiety, headaches, and sleep deprivation. Blue light is the main villain here. You might think that turning on night mode and getting that orange glow in your phone screen is enough, but it's not. Blue light is also present in LED bulbs, the kind we use at home and in city lighting, because they're cheap and energy efficient. My point is that blue light is basically everywhere, and it's a real challenge to avoid it completely. This is also a big part of why we're not entirely sure how bad light pollution is nowadays. I mean, some statistics suggest that this issue increased by 49% over 25 years, up to 2017. But the real figure may be even higher. The thing is, blue light has shorter wavelengths, and the satellites we depend on today struggle to detect it accurately, meaning they don't quite capture the full extent of the light pollution caused by LED lights. Animals are lost and confused too. Their sleep patterns are also affected. A study from Germany revealed that blackbirds in urban areas are getting active much earlier than those in natural habitats. They wake up and start singing up to 5 hours sooner than their country cousins. Migration behaviors are messed up, especially for birds like sparrows and thrushes who travel at night. You see, they rely on the moon and stars as their internal GPS. So you can imagine how disoriented they get when they spot something like Las Vegas's massive sphere, lit up by 1.2 million LED bulbs. The intense brightness hides stars and disrupts their navigation across thousands of miles and continents. And it's not just that. Artificial lighting is unfortunately causing more birds to crash into skyscrapers and high-rise buildings. Insects, like mosquitoes, are also affected by light pollution. Yep, they're kind of gross, so it might not bug you if they're attracted to artificial lights and meet their fate. But remember, they're a crucial food source for many animals, like bats or frogs, so disrupting their populations could throw off entire food chains. Nighttime lights are causing problems underwater as well. Marine creatures near brightly lit panels off the Welsh coast are changing their behaviors, and fewer sea squirts and sea bristles are hanging out near those lights. Another example involves sea turtles. They typically lay their eggs on beaches and often return to the same spots for years. But when those beaches are too bright at night, female turtles might become confused and decide not to lay their eggs there. Now, do we really need all this light? It's hard to say. Some people might feel safer at night, while others think the opposite. You see, it's usually the glare that messes up our sight. Here's an example. If there's a super bright lamp blocking our view, say at a gate, we can't see anything but the light. But check this out. If we partially cover the light with our hands, suddenly we can spot an intruder. Wow. What I mean is that more lamps don't always mean more safety. It's all about using them the right way, and doing things like dimming lights can actually enhance security. Plus, it could save you some cash. Speaking of which, light waste has a pretty big impact on the economy. Take a Cobra Head streetlight, for instance. The light projected directly by it is only 30% of the total light it emits. In the US alone, roughly 1/3 of the light at night goes to waste, and that adds up to a staggering annual cost of $2.2 billion. Electric lights aren't all bad, of course. They have done some good stuff for us, like making our days longer so we can get more done and have some fun afterward. But we can totally minimize this issue. Turning off all the lights would be awesome, but let's be real, that is very difficult, if not impossible these days. So, what can we do? Get those fancy controls like dimmers, timers, and motion sensors to make sure our lights are super efficient. Go for warmer colored lamps instead of those harsh blue ones. Oh, and consider using fully shielded light fixtures, like those cool vintage table lamps. They direct the light down where you need it, so you don't get that annoying glare or light scattering everywhere. Plus, when you cut down on wasted light, you're not just helping out the planet, you're also saving some cash on your electric bill. Talk about a win-win! A new super-Earth has been spotted by astronomers, and it's quite intriguing. This planet, called TOI 715b, is about 1.5 the size of Earth, which is why it's called the super-Earth. It's also relatively close to us in space terms, only 137 light-years away. For comparison, most exoplanets are hundreds of light-years away, and all the interesting stuff, like black holes and nebulas, are usually more than thousands of light-years away from us. So, could it be habitable? The habitable zone is an estimate of where a planet might have the right conditions for liquid water. This is what we call some distance from the star, where the temperatures on the planet should be okay-ish, and water should stay liquid on its surface. It's not super precise, because it depends on a bunch of factors like the type of star, how reflective the planet is, its size, and so on. Also, just being in this zone isn't enough for water to actually be there. The planet also needs the right kind of atmosphere and a few other things. So, we invented a stricter definition in 2014, the conservative habitable zone. It's a more precise term defining the best candidates that have liquid water. Otherwise, we get too many potentially habitable planets that are not actually habitable at all. The CHZ is based on how much energy a planet gets from its star compared to Earth. If a rocky planet gets between 40 to 85%, it's considered to be in the CHZ, no matter how far away it is from its star. These planets have a higher chance of being habitable. And yes, TOI 715b is located there. This super-Earth orbits the M-type star, also called red dwarf. It's a star that's much smaller and cooler than our Sun, about 1/4 of the Sun's size and mass. But if the planet is located in the habitable zone, it's actually a better option for life. Red dwarfs live much longer than our Sun, a yellow dwarf. This also means that they have more time to form little creatures on their planets. And this red dwarf really is older than our star. Our Sun is 4.6 billion years old, and this star is 6.6 billion years old, give or take a few hundred million. It doesn't have much magnetic activity, so it's not dangerous. It doesn't flare up like younger red dwarfs. These flares can be super strong and might even hurt planets by taking away their atmospheres. Although some planets around it do have thinner atmospheres, it seems like this red dwarf has already gone all out. These red dwarfs are where we're looking for planets that could support life right now. Our super-Earth is really close to its star, zooming around it in just 19 days. Since the star is small and the planet is so close, the planet passing in front of its star happens a lot and looks really clear. This makes it easy for telescopes like the James Webb to study its atmosphere without needing too much time. Now, speaking of the James Webb Space Telescope, it's bringing us into a new era of understanding distant planets beyond our solar system. Imagine being able to see what gases make up the air on a planet millions of light years away. James Webb will help us to find worlds that could support life. Right now, it's trying to figure out whether TOI 715b has an atmosphere. If it does, its atmosphere might be easier to spot compared to a planet that's drier and denser. And then we might get even more height because it would look like a good place for life. On top of all that, there might be another planet in this system, also in the habitable zone. We're not sure whether it's really there, it's just a candidate with a crazy name. But if it turns out to be real, it would be about the size of Earth. Also, it would be the smallest planet in the habitable zone ever spotted by the TESS telescope. Now, another cool thing about TOI 715b is that it cannot just have water on it, but be an entire water world. An ocean planet is a type of planet that has an ocean covering its surface or has subsurface oceans. They might not have much dry land because the water can cover everything. Sometimes the entire planet can be covered in other liquids, like lava or ammonia. When it comes to planets outside our solar system, we can't see surface water directly with our current technology. Instead, scientists look for water vapor in the atmosphere as a hint there might be liquid water below. And of course, we wonder if these planets can have life, hopefully not in the form of Leviathan-like monsters. Our models show that planets with oceans might be pretty common in our galaxy. This means there could be lots of ocean worlds out there waiting to be discovered. But the most important part about TOI 715b is that it's in the so-called small planet radius gap. If we give the planets a lineup, there will be those that are bigger and smaller than Earth. But there's a sudden gap in planets that are about from 1.5 to 2 times bigger than ours. Where are they? This gap is interesting to scientists because it tells us something about how planets form and change over time. It's not that planets don't form in this size range. They actually start off larger and then lose some of their mass, like a balloon gradually deflating. Perhaps it happens because of how they orbit their stars, with stars blowing away some of their mass as they dance around it, as our Sun does with gas from comet tails. This gap holds a lot of mystery, and planets, like our new super-Earth, are clues that could help us unravel it. We aren't sure whether it exists around red dwarfs. Maybe it's a gap in how dense these planets are, rather than in their actual size. So studying our discovered planet is even more interesting. It'll help us learn more about distant stars and their planets. Now, I mentioned TESS a while back. NASA's TESS, Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, has been in space for 6 years now and has been incredibly successful. NASA launched TESS because we already found over 5,000 planets orbiting other stars, mainly thanks to the Kepler telescope. But Kepler mostly found large planets, not necessarily like Earth. We decided to focus TESS on finding smaller Earth-like planets around nearby bright stars, making them easier to study with future telescopes. Here's how it works. The camera observes stars and looks for changes in their brightness. If the brightness suddenly drops for a while and then gets back, it could mean there is a planet passing in front of it. But stars can dim for other reasons too. For example, flaring up or having dark spots on their surface, which is why we need to be careful with this data. TESS shows us the size and orbit of these planets. Then ground telescopes help determine their mass. With these 3 parameters, we can figure out what the planets are made of and if they're rocky like Earth or gassy like Jupiter. Yeah, you want to avoid Jupiter after taco night. One example of TESS's discoveries was the TOI 700 system. There, it discovered its first ever Earth-like planet, TOI 700d. This exoplanet also orbited a red dwarf, and it's even closer to us, about 100 light-years away. Unfortunately, it's unlikely to be habitable because the temperatures there are crazy. Another big discovery was made in the AU microscopy system. TESS discovered a planet about 4 times the size of Earth and another nearly 3 times Earth's size. This system has become a key area for studying how stars and planets form and change over time. TESS has also spotted a variety of other exciting finds, including supernova, hot worlds, and so on. And as it enters its 6th year, we can only expect more exciting findings to come. If an asteroid like Apophis hits Earth, we will be destroyed. Massive earthquakes will strike, and tsunamis will flood everything. Apophis is a billion-year-old celestial body that has been in the solar system since its inception. So you might be thinking, well, how likely is it that this giant space stone will collide with our planet in 2029? Well, let's find out, shall we? Apophis is a big, bad asteroid discovered in 2004 by the Kitt Peak National Observatory in Arizona. Since then, it has proudly held the title of one of the most dangerous asteroids ever located. It's around 1,100 feet wide, which is a bit bigger than the Empire State Building and the Eiffel Tower. Because of how scary it was named Apophis, like the Egyptian immortal creature that was considered to bring eternal darkness and destruction to Earth. Oh boy. In 2021, researchers had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study this floating rock when it passed near our planet, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Now, some scientists say that there is a small chance of Apophis hitting the Earth on Friday, April 13, 2029. The Yarkovsky effect is to blame for this, since it can slightly nudge this space rock towards Earth. This effect originates from the uneven emission of thermal photons from a rotating celestial object, resulting in a fascinating force exerted upon it in space. These emitted photons possess momentum and play a pivotal role in shaping the dynamics of the body. The asteroid has two sides, light and dark, just like the Moon. The light side faces the Sun and is warmer than the dark side. But the thing also turns, so the sides constantly change direction and temperature. This change could be detrimental because it slightly pushes Apophis toward Earth. Unfortunately, nobody knows how the Yarkovsky effect will influence the asteroid's path. On the other hand, on the asteroid's last flyby of Earth in 2021, astronomers used radar to take accurate measurements of its trajectory and confidently concluded Apophis will safely miss Earth in 2029 by about 20,000 miles and won't bother us again for at least 100 years. Now, generally speaking, every 8,000 years, our planet is hit by a falling star that has similar dimensions to those of Apophis. The last time we were hit by a slightly smaller meteor was in 2013. A new spacecraft developed by NASA called the OSIRIS-REx was launched in 2016 to collect samples from another slightly less terrifying celestial body called Bennu. 4 years later, it finally arrived at the thing, got some samples, quickly said goodbye to Bennu, and started traveling back towards Earth. The samples were safely stored in a capsule dropped in Utah. So far, this has been the most significant sample ever taken from an asteroid. After the delivery, the spacecraft didn't waste any time and started chasing Apophis. Now, OSIRIS-REx has been renamed to OSIRIS-APEX, and is currently playing tag with Apophis. With some luck, on the 2nd of April 2029, when the asteroid zips close by Earth, the spacecraft will reach Apophis and land on it. It will stay on Apophis for 18 months, collecting valuable information and taking thousands of pictures. The asteroid will be monitored with the help of powerful telescopes. At some point, Apophis will get too close to the Sun, and then all the monitoring work will be on Osiris's apex back. If you live in Europe, West Asia, or Africa, you're one of those lucky people who will have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see Apophis with the unaided eye. It'll be visible in the sky in these regions in 2029, and those who have telescopes will be able to spot it once again in 2036. OSIRIS-APEX will experience some problems because the asteroid has a thick crust, and the spacecraft won't be able to collect data as easily as it did with Bennu. OSIRIS-APEX has a unique thruster that will blow all the dust from Apophis while landing. This will be a perfect chance to analyze the surface of the asteroid to see what it's made of. The craft will spend 1.5 years mapping the asteroid, trying to detect changes in its shape. All this research will show how the celestial body is likely to move so we can better design plans to protect Earth from such things. In 2025, NASA is also going to launch the mission Apophis Pathfinder, and it will be the first spaceship to ever touch this asteroid. It will land approximately a year after its launch. Also, NASA has proposed sending a swarm of tiny craft into space to help humanity develop effective protective tactics against asteroid strikes. We know that Apophis originated in the primary asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. In the past million years, this celestial body has changed its path because of the considerable influence of Jupiter's gravitation. Now it seems like it favors the Sun more, meaning this asteroid will come very close to Earth. That's why it's classified as a near-Earth celestial body. A lot of tests and research have been done to find a way to deal with asteroids. Some solutions include drilling and detonating the space body from inside, or testing new technologies, like attaching rockets to it and trying to steer it away from Earth. We can also hit it with something moving at high speeds to make it change its course. Apophis is an S-type asteroid made of rocks and minerals like iron and nickel, and is shaped like a peanut. It can tell us a lot about the past and possibly the future. Sampling this space object could reveal how life on Earth began and how plants appeared. There are many theories that suggest that water arrived on our planet on an asteroid or a comet. Asteroids are like priceless time capsules. Unlike rocks on Earth, which have undergone thousands of changes, like erosion, most celestial bodies are still intact and much easier to study. When meteors fall on Earth, they get covered in debris that's impossible to clean. That's why studying Apophis while it's still in space is so important. Also, some asteroids are made of precious metals like platinum. Right now, we have a high demand for metals that we use in production, and mining metals on Earth is quite tricky. Just one large meteor might have iron, nickel, gold, and platinum that could last us millions of years. If Apophis has this amount of metals, well, we'd want to break it down and bring it back to Earth. One space rock could be worth quadrillions of dollars, making space mining highly profitable. And still, it would cost us more to get it back to Earth than to dig up these materials here. As technology progresses and new kinds of rockets are developed, this might become possible at some point. So, even though we're safe for the next 100 years from Apophis, you probably still want to see what would happen if something like it did impact. Come on, sure you do. Well, first let me tell you, you'll hear the sound of the collision and know what's happened even if you're miles away. You should leave your house or apartment immediately. Shortly after the impact, massive earthquakes will strike, and many tall buildings will fall. So, staying away from cities might be your best option if you have a choice. But don't escape by car. There will be massive traffic jams, and everyone will panic. Going on foot or by bike is your best option in this scenario. A prime way of transportation will be traveling by plane, so if you've always wanted to get that pilot license, now you've got a good excuse. If you have time, take along extra snacks and water, and an extra pair of socks. It's nice to live by the ocean or the sea, but in this scenario, it's the worst place to be, because giant tsunami waves will hit coastlines after the impact. If you live far away from the impact area, the tsunami might take 30 hours to arrive. You'll have a bit of time to prepare.
This planet is as light as that piece of fluff stuck to your sweater. In the scientific world, it's called WASP 193b, but let's call it the Cotton Candy Planet. It's located around 1,200 light-years away from us. Sure thing we'll never see it with our own eyes, but scientists say the Cotton Candy Planet is pretty much Jupiter's bigger, bouncier cousin, 50% more massive. It has an extremely low density combined with other factors, such as high temperatures and the infrared brightness of its host star, that make it look special. May I have a close-up here, please? Thank you. See how fluffy it is? Right now, you understand that it would be impossible to stand on its surface. Anyways, it's not often that you meet something like WASP 193b at a planetary party. Such planets might be fluffy because they're getting cooked by their parent stars, puffing up like a marshmallow that's seen too much campfire action. But the thing is, if you're that close to your star and mostly made of a hydrogen-helium cocktail, you're not gonna keep your puffiness for long. It's like trying to hold on to a balloon during a hurricane. Exoplanets like this fluffy guy here are pretty rare, but there's also WASP 10007b, and it looks squishy too. This one kicks back 200 light-years from us, and it chose the constellation of Virgo as its official residence. From some perspective, you might say that this planet is a copycat of Earth. It has helium, and its atmosphere contains sulfur dioxide. There's some resemblance for sure, but WASP 10007b has the density of a marshmallow. It means we can snoop through its atmosphere easier than we could with a heavyweight like Jupiter. Scientists were beyond surprised when they peered through their super space goggles, the James Webb Space Telescope's MIRI-cam. They spotted clouds made of the stuff that builds beaches, silicate, or as you might know it, sand. Imagine sandcastles in the sky. Those sound clouds are way up there in the penthouse suite of WASP 10007b's atmosphere, where the thermostat reads a breezy 932 degrees Fahrenheit. Normally, you'd need 1,832 degrees Fahrenheit to cook up this kind of cloud, so scientists are scratching their heads. How did those grainy puffs get all the way up there? Turns out, WASP 10007b might be running its own sandy water cycle, but with scorching silicates instead of H2O. Silicate particles get whooshed up from the sizzling lower levels by some sort of cosmic elevator, and then they cool off, party together as clouds, and sprinkle down a silicate drizzle. Nobody's packing sunscreen for this kind of sandstorm, though. Now look at this Kepler planet family located in the Kepler 51 star system. This cosmic three-pack hangs around 2,400 light-years away, looking huge but having the same density as your favorite snack. And it's cotton candy yet again. Scientists have been digging into what these space treats are made of. They now believe these puffball planets are big hydrogen-helium gas balloons with a generous smearing of methane haze. It also turns out these planets might be going through a cosmic downsize. Now, let's talk about a planet called Mascara 5b. Nope, it doesn't look like one of those cosmetic tubes from your mom's drawer. Scientists say it's one of the hottest planets ever discovered. They call it an ultra-hot Jupiter, showing off its impressive size, almost twice as big as our very own Jupiter. The dayside temperature is around a scorching 4,892 degrees Fahrenheit, while the night side hits 4,172 degrees Fahrenheit. No chance for any sort of life to survive out there. Actually, it's the second hottest nightside temperature ever recorded. To put it in perspective, the temperature of molten lava sits between 1,292 degrees Fahrenheit and 2,282 degrees Fahrenheit. So, the planet is a whole lot hotter than this scorching liquid rock. Its temperatures even surpass the melting point of most metals, which is around 3,632 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists mention that the insane heat on this planet is comparable to the exhaust of a rocket engine. Back in 2005, one famous star called... Wait, is that a name or a phone number? Whatever. So, turns out this star has a hot sister, and they have very similar names. This hot sister has B at the end. Well, this place looks like something from a sci-fi movie as it rocks a mesmerizing blue marble vibe, according to NASA. Such an appearance results from an atmosphere packed with hazy clouds laced with glass. The rain on this planet is glass-filled precipitation that likes to fall sideways, thanks to fierce winds blowing at a speed of 5,400 miles per hour. And yeah, it's the hot sister for a reason. Scientists have measured the daytime temperatures in this nightmarish world. It's around 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. So when it rains on this planet, it's more like molten glass pouring down instead of your typical waterworks. You may not know it, but space is swarming with wasps. I'm talking about planets called WASP. Meet WASP 76b. This sizzling hot Jupiter-like planet is so out of this world, it rains iron at night there. The daytime side is no less of a fiery nightmare. The temperature there is about 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit. WASP-76b may be slightly smaller than Jupiter, but don't underestimate its grandeur. This fireball is located 640 light-years away from Earth, and its terrifying climate is the result of one seriously extreme orbit. You see, these gas giants are fittingly known as hot Jupiters. They like to keep it hot, so they orbit way too close to their scorching host stars. In this case, WASP-76b is nearly 10 times closer to its star than Mercury is to our Sun. That's way too close for comfort, leaving this rebellious planet tidally locked to the star. So, while one side basks in eternal light, the other is trapped in perpetual darkness. 55 Cancri E is a total gem. It's the raddest super-Earth ever spotted. Scientists initially believed it was packed with so much carbon that its insides were blinged out with diamonds, thanks to insane pressure and sizzling temperatures of 4,892 degrees Fahrenheit. But researchers put a dent in the diamond hype, showing there was actually less carbon than we had originally thought. Well, diamonds aren't actually that rare and expensive after all. They're just well marketed. The last destination for today is GJ1214b, located 40 light-years away from Earth. This planet is like a supersized Earth, almost 3 times bigger in diameter and a whopping 7 times heavier. It orbits around its red dwarf star faster than you can finish a pizza, finishing a complete loop every 38 hours. But it's not just the planet's size or orbit that's out of this world. It's pretty hot out there, with mind-melting 450 degrees Fahrenheit. But the coolest thing is that this planet is practically drowning in water. The sizzling temperatures and crazy high pressures on GJ1214b create some super cool materials like hot ice and superfluid water. Superfluidity is something that happens in liquid helium when it's almost as cold as it can get. On Earth, water totally missed the memo on being superfluid because it needs ridiculously low temperatures and off-the-chart pressures to pull off that trick. Still, there's not much use in superfluid water. Even if you try it, you'll just get dehydrated.
Hundreds of millions of rocks orbit the Sun within the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, but only some of them come relatively close to Earth. NASA classifies asteroids orbiting within 30 million miles of our planet as near-Earth objects, and inside this group, there are particularly worrisome objects. Those are so large and orbit so closely to our home planet that they could turn into a real threat to the world should a direct collision occur. At the moment, NASA is keeping a close eye on an asteroid named Bennu. It's a fairly large space object that might smash into our planet in 159 years. According to the experts, the asteroid, which was first spotted in 1999, is quite likely to drift into the orbit of our planet. If it happens, it might collide with Earth by the 24th of September, 2182. Asteroid Bennu is thought to be taller than the Empire State Building. If that hits our planet, the collision will release 1,200 megatons of energy. That's an enormous amount of energy that nothing built on Earth could produce. Scientists from NASA believe that during the flyby in the 22nd century, there's a tiny chance that the asteroid will pass through a gravitational keyhole. That's a region of space that might set the space traveler on a certain path, which could result in the asteroid crashing into Earth. Bennu flies by our planet every 6 years. It has had 3 close encounters with Earth, in 1999, 2005, and 2011. These days, scientists estimate the chance of the asteroid hitting our planet by 2182 as 1 in 2,700. That's more than 5 times a person's chance of being struck by lightning. But even though Bennu's chance of colliding with Earth are quite low at the moment, the space rock has still been categorized as a, quote, potentially hazardous asteroid, all because it might come as close as 4.65 million miles from Earth. That's the reason why it's also classified as a near-Earth object. Bennu is a carbon-rich asteroid that was formed in the first 10 million years of the history of the solar system. That's around 4.5 billion years ago. No wonder this space body holds precious clues to the origin and development of the rocky planets of our solar system, which are, as you recall, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Even better, it may contain organic molecules, similar to those that are crucial for life to evolve. In 2020, NASA's OSIRIS-REx managed to briefly touch the surface of the asteroid. It collected some samples and propelled off the space rock afterward. For NASA, it was the first mission of this kind. But it won't probably come as a surprise that Bennu isn't the only asteroid we should worry about. Asteroid 99942, Apophis, is another space body we'd better watch out for. It's a near-Earth object about 1,100 feet across. It was discovered in 2004, and at first, it was identified as one of the most dangerous asteroids ever detected. Apophis gained notoriety very fast. It was believed to pose a serious threat to Earth. Experts predicted that it would come uncomfortably close to our planet in 2029. Luckily, after a more careful examination of Apophis and its orbit, astronomers concluded that there was no risk of the asteroid colliding with our planet for at least a century. The risk of an impact in 2029 was ruled out completely, as well as the potential impact that could be caused by the asteroid's close approach in 2036. Interestingly, until March 2021, there was a small chance of a collision in 2068. But then, Apophis made a flyby of Earth, and astronomers took this chance to use powerful radars to estimate the asteroid's orbit around the Sun more precisely. This allowed them to rule out any impact risk for at least the next 100 years. Now, the reason why such discoveries make us so worried is that even a relatively small asteroid, the size of a house, can wreak havoc upon colliding with our planet. And if an asteroid is larger than 0.6 miles across, astronomers call it a planet destroyer. The impact energy released by such an asteroid after striking Earth could be devastating. That's why knowing where such asteroids are and in what direction they're moving is crucial. The problem is that our capability to protect the planet from asteroid impacts is not top-notch yet. If such a catastrophe was about to occur, we would need some time to prepare, because an asteroid collision is no joke. Probably the most well-known asteroid impact site is the Chicxulub crater. It's the evidence of the terrifying collision that led to the extinction of dinosaurs. Strangely, this crater isn't very visible, but some others are. For example, Barringer Crater in Arizona, which is also called Meteor Crater. It looks rather blood-chilling when you think about the collision that led to its appearance. In any case, we now know that space rocks hit not only the Earth but also the Moon, Mercury, and Mars. No rocky planet in the solar system is safe from asteroid impacts. That's why we have an entire scientific enterprise whose goal is to find and catalog the asteroid population of the solar system. Now, it might sound a bit scary, but there are around 25,000 asteroids larger than 460 feet in diameter near the orbit of our planet. Such a space rock is large enough to wipe an entire city off the face of the Earth. So far, less than 50% of such asteroids have been detected and tracked. There are also an estimated 230,000 objects equal to or larger than 160 feet in size. Those are capable of destroying a concentrated urban area, and still fewer than 8% of those have been detected. There are also tens of millions of smaller near-Earth objects. They are larger than 33 feet across and might cause some surface damage. Less than 1% of such small space bodies have been discovered so far. Now, the thing is, the inner solar system is extremely challenging for asteroid search. Each night, there are only 2 10-minute windows when astronomers can observe the region, all because the sun's glare creates a very bright background glow. Plus, the atmosphere of our planet also distorts and blurs observations. Spotting asteroids in such conditions is beyond the capabilities of most telescopes. A unique instrument is needed to fulfill this task, and the tool of choice is the Dark Energy Camera at Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory in Chile. This device wasn't designed to hunt asteroids. Researchers built it to search for another elusive target, dark energy, the mysterious force driving the expansion of the universe. The DEC is supposed to observe hundreds of millions of galaxies. That's why it's both wide and deep. This way, it can both peer deep into the universe and capture a wide field of view, which helps it record the motions of galaxies and the conditions in the early age of the universe. But it also means that the DEC is perfectly suited to spotting asteroids near the Sun. Inner asteroids are rare, and deep images are necessary because such asteroids are faint. Scientists need to be able to fight both the bright twilight sky near our star and the distorting effect of Earth's atmosphere, and the DEC can help them achieve their goal. The Dark Energy Camera was built to carry out the Dark Energy Survey, which finished in 2019. Now astronomers can direct the power of the camera towards other tasks. They claim that the DEC's survey is one of the most sensitive searches ever performed for objects near Venus's orbit and within the orbit of our planet. It provides us a great chance to find out what kinds of objects are lurking in the inner solar system. For decades now, people have been dreaming of exploring space. And since the year 2000, there has indeed been a continuous presence of people in space. And recently, a new record has been set. Just a couple of weeks ago, there were 17 people from 5 different countries in Earth's orbit at the same time. The previous record was set in September 2021 during the privately funded Inspiration 4 mission. At that time, the number of people in orbit reached 14. So let's see. Just recently, 3 more people have arrived at China's Tiangong space station. There were 3 more astronauts aboard the same station, but they've been there since November 2022 and are supposed to return back to Earth in June. Then there are 7 people on board the International Space Station, and 4 more departed the ISS aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon named Freedom. They successfully returned to Earth on the 30th of May 2023, leaving 13 people in orbit. Interestingly, the current record also includes the 600th person to get into Earth's orbit. Specialist Rayana Barnai from AX-2 mission became a space traveler number 600, as well as the first Saudi woman in space. But I've got something even more exciting to tell you. Oh my! The record for most people in space, and just not in Earth's orbit, was reset not so long ago too. But it lasted for a mere 5 minutes or so. But during this short period of time, there were 20 people off the planet. This record was set when 6 members of the Virgin Galactic Unity 25 Spaceship Two crew happened to be in space at the same time as 3 Chinese taikonauts living and working aboard Tiangong and 11 astronauts on board the International Space Station. Now that's getting crowded. Well, the International Space Station has always hosted the majority of space travelers from Earth. But I bet there are some cool facts about this marvel of technological development you haven't heard yet. The ISS is the 3rd brightest object in the night sky, and the coolest thing? You can sign up for a special service and you'll get a text every time the ISS travels over your location and is visible with the unaided eye. I've seen it dozens of times myself, and it's very, very cool. Normally, you can see it between dusk and dawn, but be ready because the station is very fast. It moves at a speed of 5 miles per second and circles our planet every 90 minutes. The International Space Station is a true record breaker. It's the largest human-made object in space. It's 357 feet long from end to end, which is about the same length as a soccer field. It also weighs about 450 tons. 8 spacecraft can dock at the ISS at the same time. The working and living space of the station is bigger than a 6-bedroom house. Astronauts have 6 sleeping quarters, a gym, 2 bathrooms, and a beautiful 360-degree view from their special bay window. Now to the nitty-gritty. On the ISS, you wouldn't have to deal with lots of disgusting smells. There is a specially trained person who smells everything astronauts take with them in space. It's done to protect them from unpleasant odors. The thing is that you can't really air the room out there if you don't like how it smells inside. That's why NASA is very careful about what kinds of smells are allowed to pass through. You'd also have to get rid of your clothes instead of washing them after each use. To bring a mere 1 pound of load to the International Space Station costs up to $10,000. That's why it's easier to throw your clothes away when they get dirty than to waste water washing them. Now, while sleeping, you'd have exceptionally good airflow around you. Otherwise, the carbon dioxide you'd exhale would form a bubble around your head and you get oxygen deprived, and that's not good. Now, people often think that in space you experience zero gravity, hence the weightlessness astronauts feel on the International Space Station. But that's not exactly true. Gravity is one of the most important forces that exist in the universe. Thanks to it, the Moon can orbit Earth and the Sun doesn't float away from our home Milky Way galaxy. But astronauts on the ISS experience not full-fledged but microgravity, which means itsy-bitsy gravity. Earth's gravity on the space station is not only around 10 to 12% weaker than the gravity on the planet's surface, but astronauts are constantly in free fall. The spacecraft, the people inside, and all the objects aboard keep falling forward, not down, but around our planet, following a specific orbit. And since they're all falling together, the crew and the stuff inside seem to be floating. But our space exploration plans are much more ambitious than just orbiting our planet on board the ISS. We're planning to send a mission to the Moon and build a colony on Mars. Some experts claim that in the next 25 years, around 20,000 people are likely to leave Earth. But how many people would it take to colonize an entire star system? In 2002, anthropologist John Moore from the University of Florida stated that a spaceship with 150 passengers could leave Earth and set off on a several thousand years journey to another star system. And upon arrival, the descendants of the original crew could build settlements in a new world. That seems like a lot of work to me. Let's continue. The nearest star system, Proxima Centauri, is 4.2 light-years away from our home planet. Talking about space, it's just next door. But for us, it's so far that we would need to build a generational spaceship to get us there. But the question is how many people you'd need to send on such a mission to have enough genetic diversity. A new study disagrees with John Moore, claiming it must be way more than 150 people. According to a scientist from Portland State University, a spaceship traveling to such a distant world would have to carry at least 10,000 people. This number might secure the success of the mission. 40,000 people would be even better. Who knows what could happen to the travelers during such a challenging and unprecedented journey? At the moment, NASA isn't ready to send humans even to Mars, let alone a distant solar system. But a few private organizations are working on this project. They hope to make interstellar trips possible in the next century. They count on a huge increase in propulsion speed, which could potentially reduce the travel time between stars to a mere few hundred years. Researchers have built several simulations to figure out how many various scenarios could play out during such an interstellar mission, and they have come to the conclusion that the success of this mission would greatly depend on the size of the starting population. Genetic diversity would keep the travelers healthy. The larger the population is, the more diversity it has. And 150 people is definitely not enough to maintain genetic variations. Even a population of 500 people wouldn't be sufficient enough. At the same time, if we sent to another solar system 40,000 people, we'd be able to maintain 100% of the variation. Even 10,000 travelers would make the scenario relatively stable, which means that any number between 10 and 40,000 people would be a pretty safe bet. But of course, we wouldn't be able to send so many people in space in just one spaceship. We'd have to build many and spread people among them. These ships could be modular, able to dock together for trade and some social gatherings, for the genetic variety, I'm guessing. But they would travel separately, so that if some disaster struck one of them, the rest would remain unharmed. But to make interstellar travel possible, researchers and engineers will have to overcome loads of obstacles. We still need to increase propulsion speed, deal with the negative health effects of living in space, and invent self-sustaining systems providing air, water, and food. Or we could just decide to fix our own planet and stay home.
On March 24th, European skies were dominated by a glowing, insane blue spiral. The eerie sight kept growing, expanding, almost like the whole Earth was about to get sucked into a vortex. And after a couple of minutes, poof, it suddenly disappeared. Even though it looked like some kind of extraterrestrial tech, there's actually a very human explanation behind it. Photos of this strange swirl started popping up all over Europe, with people sharing them from countries like the United Kingdom, France, Norway, and Germany. But if we really want to figure out what happened, we have to look all the way over to the United States. Turns out, on that same day, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket was launched from Florida at around 1:50 in the afternoon local time. So while most people in the US saw clear skies after the launch, it actually caused that strange anomaly in the European skies. And that happened because Falcon 9 is a reusable rocket. So, after launching into space, it releases what is called its payload. And by that, I mean whatever it is carrying, like a satellite. After completing its mission, the rocket itself turns back toward Earth. As it does, it ejects any leftover fuel, which instantly freezes due to the high altitude, forming a spiral pattern because of the rocket's movement. Light then reflects off the frozen fuel, making it visible from Earth. Basically, that's what the blue spiral was, leftover fuel released by the rocket in space. So, should we be worried down here on the ground? I mean, is it dangerous? Well, no. It's not like it was some kind of spacecraft accident, it's just leftovers and light. And this is totally normal for the Falcon 9 rocket. Even though it went viral this time, the same phenomenon was spotted about 4 years ago. Back then, people speculated all kinds of things, like a swirling galaxy moving across the sky, or even an unidentified, unexplained flying object. But nah, it was just one of Elon Musk's space toys. Speaking of which, his space agency is also behind another eerie sighting that's becoming more common. On clear nights, many people have reported seeing a strange string of lights moving quickly in a straight line, almost like a train of stars. Those aren't drones, and they're definitely not perfectly organized shooting stars. These strange lights are actually Starlink satellites from SpaceX. You know, that project that beams high-speed internet from space using thousands of tiny satellites, basically turning the entire planet into a giant Wi-Fi zone. But wait, satellites don't have lights on them. So how is it possible that they look so bright at night? Well, basically, what we're seeing is the sun reflecting off the satellites as they travel through their lowest orbit. And they're only visible if the sky isn't too bright. What's really impressive is that you can see this same event more than once on the same day. That's because Starlink satellites travel at a staggering speed of 300 miles per minute, and they complete one full orbit of Earth every 90 minutes. So, doing the math, that means you could spot those satellites within 2 hours of a previous sighting. Without a doubt, the beginning of the year was busy for skywatchers in the United States. In February, they got to see this stunning, cloudy jellyfish shape taking over the sky. What do you think it is? If you guessed another thing related to SpaceX, you're right. This is another art created by a Falcon 9 rocket. This time, it happened because the rocket was launched during the evening twilight. The light from the setting sun bounces off the rocket's smoke trail, creating this amazing effect. Now, let's move on to Italy, where another creepy event occurred. It was a stormy night, and suddenly, way up in the sky, a giant glowing red ring flashed for just a split second. Nope, it was not an extraterrestrial portal. This is something called an ELV. This happens when a powerful lightning strike sends out an electromagnetic pulse that hits the ionosphere, which is a super high up layer of our atmosphere. When this happens, nitrogen atoms up there get excited and glow red, creating a massive but super quick light show. Another red phenomenon happened in Scandinavia, but instead of a ring, it was more like a streak of light. This is known as a stable auroral red arc, or SAR. Despite the name, it's not an aurora. It's something much rarer. This phenomenon happens when the Earth's magnetic field, which acts like a big protective shield, gets disturbed. This disturbance causes some gas in the atmosphere to get super hot, thanks to a huge electrical current around the planet. What's weird is that only oxygen gets heated up during a SAR, which is why these light shows always glow that same red color. And fun fact, this event is more likely to happen after a big solar storm weakens Earth's magnetic field. It is impressive to see phenomena like this with the naked eye, but the view from outside Earth can be just as stunning. In 2022, an astronaut aboard the International Space Station spotted two bizarre blue blobs of light glimmering in our planet's atmosphere. They happened at the same time, but they weren't related at all. One of them was a massive lightning strike that hit right next to a large circular gap in the clouds. The lightning lit up the surrounding cloud walls, creating a glowing ring around the hole. Another one was caused by the moon. The way the moon was positioned made the sunlight it reflected pass through Earth's atmosphere, creating a bright blue blob with a fuzzy ring around it. And if you're wondering what that weird orange halo is, running parallel to the curvature of the Earth, I've got you. That's the edge of the atmosphere, also known as Earth's limb. And this is what it looks like when viewed from the International Space Station. In Canada, residents of central Alberta were looking up at the sky one night when they suddenly saw something strange. A bunch of vertical beams of light that seemed to be coming from the ground and reaching up into the blackness of space. It sure looked like something out of a science fiction movie, but this is actually just an optical illusion. Yep, it's a visual trick caused by some specific winter conditions. This phenomenon happens when light is refracted by ice crystals. Here's what's going on. When it's freezing outside, tiny ice crystals form in the air. These crystals are super thin and flat, so each one acts like a tiny mirror that reflects light sources positioned below it. Basically, the crystals reflect the light straight up, creating those glowing vertical beams. And it can be caused by any light source, like the sun or the moon. But in most cases, the sources of these light pillars is man-made, like car headlights or streetlights. Even though the phenomenon is completely natural, it rarely happens, and only in very specific situations. First, it has to be freezing cold. On that particular day in central Alberta, for example, the temperature was around minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, the weather has to be calm, with no wind at all. If a storm breaks out, forget it. You won't be able to see the light pillars. And don't mix them up with auroras, okay? Auroras are mostly seen in high-latitude regions, like around the Arctic and Antarctic. Since they happen way up in the atmosphere, they're visible over large areas. Light pillars, on the other hand, are more localized and concentrated in a much smaller area. But hey, no matter which one you spot, if you're lucky enough to see one of these amazing sights in the sky, you're in for a show you won't forget. Right now, 4 tiny, Earth-like planets are chilling around one of the closest star systems to us. We're talking second closest. These little rocky worlds are each about 20 to 30% the mass of Earth. So not quite Earth 2.0, but still pretty solid. Will one of them become our new home one day? Well, all of them are pretty close, so future humans might actually visit them someday. Not like next year or anything, but we could potentially send missions there. Don't expect any extraterrestrial neighbors, though. Those planets probably aren't home to life, or at least not anything we'd recognize. Let's take a look at them. The planets are called Bernard B, C, D, and E. How creative, huh? The innermost has a mass of 26% of Earth. The second one is a bit bigger, with a mass of 30% of Earth. The third one has 4% more mass than the previous. And the outermost is... no, it's not the biggest. Actually, it's just a baby, with a mass of 19% of Earth. All the planets are likely rocky, like the inner planets of our solar system. They orbit their star very closely. That's why they only need a few days, under a week, to make a full circle. Now, what about that star these little guys are circling, It's called Barnard's star. Astronomers have always had a hunch there might be at least one planet orbiting it. First off, this star is super close, in cosmic terms of course. Only the Alpha Centauri trio is closer to us. Barnard's star is just under 6 light-years away, which is basically next door. At the same time, it's not like our Sun. Barnard's star is a red dwarf, the most common kind of star out there. It's got only about 1/6 the mass of the Sun. But red dwarfs are a goldmine for learning about planets outside our solar system. And studying Barnard's star can help scientists figure out what planets around single stars, like our Sun or this red dwarf, are like. Or what kind of environments red dwarf planets might have. And most importantly, we might finally find the answer to this super important question. Could any of these places actually support life? For the longest time, scientists thought there might be a big Jupiter-like gas giant hanging out near Barnard's star. All because the star has a little wobble. It looks as if it shifts towards and away from Earth over time, so something might be tugging on it. Interestingly, it wasn't a giant planet doing the pulling. According to a study from March 2025, it's actually 4 smaller rocky planets, each about 4 times the mass of Mercury. One day, they ganged up and started tugging on the star together. These planets are incredibly close to their star, so close that they can whip around it in just a few days. Sadly, because of that, they might be way too hot for anything like life. Besides, since these 4 seem to explain all the star's movement, the researchers think there's probably nothing else orbiting the habitable zone. So, there's no Earth 2.0 orbiting around Barnard's star. Still, it's an awesome find, especially since this star is basically our cosmic neighbor. Plus, the system might not stay off limits forever. With nuclear fusion engines or light sails, futuristic propulsion systems that could make the trip way faster. We might probably go there one day. And then we'll finally figure out if these worlds are really lifeless and maybe even colonize them. Now, let's see how scientists found the star's hidden planets. Normally, astronomers spot exoplanets when they catch them crossing in front of their stars and blocking some light. But Barnard's star is tricky because in our view, it's like we're looking from above the system, so its planets don't block the light in the usual way. That's why they call it the Great White Whale of planet hunting. To get around this, researchers used a super sensitive instrument called Maroon X attached to the Gemini North telescope on Hawaii's Mauna Kea volcano. Over 112 nights, spread out across 3 years, the telescope picked up tiny changes in the star's movement. These shifts let scientists figure out how many planets must be tugging on the star, as well as estimate their sizes. At first, they found 3 planets. But then they used another device, deliciously called Espresso, and located at the Very Large Telescope in Chile. And only after a shot of this espresso did they find a 4th planet. By combining the data from both instruments, they were able to more or less confidently say their findings were solid, not just random glitches in the data. Even though red dwarfs, like Barnard's star, are the most common type of star in the universe, most are way too far for us to see planets around them easily. These new findings suggest that small rocky planets could be pretty common around these stars, and that's huge for future discoveries. Now, finding new exoplanets is cool and all, but it might be even more exciting to dwell on their birth and evolution. And a recent study has made the sweetest discovery ever. Newly born exoplanets might actually look like Smarties, that popular British candy, rather than spheres. We've always kinda assumed that baby planets are born ball-shaped, but they might be oblate spheroids instead. A team of scientists from the University of Central Lancashire in England used computer simulations to build a model of the formation of planets in dense gas disks surrounding young stars. After that, they compared these models with actual observations and noticed that the young planets took pretty unusual shapes. The thing is that even though almost 6,000 exoplanets have been discovered so far, astronomers still don't have a clear understanding of the sequence of events marking their birth and early evolution. But this new research might finally shed light on this process. So, the astronomers examined the formation mechanisms of gas giant planets like Jupiter and came to the conclusion that planets built up from their centers. After that, the researchers focused on the initial shapes of such planets. They were also interested in how they could encourage the growth of these planetary seeds. How could they turn into such massive planets, some of them bigger than our solar system's largest giants? According to the standard theory of the formation of planets, such growth happens gradually and smoothly. First, dust particles start to stick together, turning into larger and larger objects. This process lasts for a very long time and is known as core accretion. It's the model of planet formation scientists favor. There's another theory, according to which planets' birth might happen over shorter periods of time. This data involves a protoplanetary disk, a disk of gas which makes up 99% of its mass, and dust, around 1%. This disk orbits a newly formed star, and hypothetically, planets might form from this cloud. Protoplanetary disks are likely to be common byproducts of star formation. They might range in mass from 0.001 to 0.3 solar masses. Inside such disks, matter slowly moves inward, and dust particles grow bigger, to the size of pebbles. At one point, after 2 to 3 million years, a giant rotating protoplanetary disk breaks into pieces, and that's how baby planets are born. This theory is known as the disk instability model. As for the model built by the team, it seems to support this second, less favored theory: rapid planet formation through disk instability. All because this theory explains how large planets can form relatively quickly at pretty large distances from their host stars. As for the weird flattened shape of these newly formed planets, it might be due to the material falling onto them. Most likely, it goes mainly to the poles of new planets. One of the main conclusions of the research is that the appearance of young exoplanets, as we see them from Earth, may vary depending on how they're angled. If Earth is directed face-on to an exoplanet, it will seem that the latter has a traditional spherical shape. But if seen on edge, a baby exoplanet will look like a real smarty. The team is going to continue to investigate the formation of planets with the help of an improved computer model. They believe they can find out the role the environment around a young planet plays in affecting its shape and formation.
It looks like a regular beach, but something sets off an alarm blaring in your head. The sand looks too red, the sun is too bright, the wind is all wrong, it's hard to breathe, and there's no water in the ocean. Well, panic not. It's normal, since you're on Mars. For the longest time, we've seen Mars as a dry, lifeless dust ball, a freezing desert where water exists only as ice or vapor. But new research suggests that billions of years ago, it was a totally different place. And instead of endless dust, it may have had something much more familiar to us: sunny, sandy beaches. Scientists from Penn State, UC Berkeley, and Guangzhou University studied radar data from China's Zhurong rover. It started to roll across Mars in 2021. While exploring the surface of the red planet, it found sloping rock formations that looked strikingly similar to the ones found on Earth's coastlines. Those are called foreshore deposits. They form when waves push sand onto a shoreline. But Zhurong wasn't just taking pretty pictures. It also had ground-penetrating radar, a tool that allowed it to scan deep below the Martian surface as it traveled 1.2 miles between May 2021 and May 2022. And it found something pretty wild: layers of sediment sloping down at a 15-degree angle. This pattern is identical to the ones left behind by waves on Earth. And this wasn't from the wind, volcanoes, or anything else. It just looked like a real beach. And that's actually a big deal. Because if there were waves and tides, there must have been a large body of water. That means Mars may have once had just the right conditions for hosting life. Even after 3.5 billion years, The formations are still incredibly similar to beaches on Earth. So there must have been a time when Mars was much more than just a dusty rock in space. After revealing this shocking news, Zhurong's radar scanned 260 feet deep into the ground, discovering sediment layers. They once formed along a path perpendicular to an ancient shoreline, the one that likely existed 4 billion years ago. At the same time, it might not be all that surprising. Back then, Mars wasn't the dry, frozen wasteland we see today. It had a thicker atmosphere, a warmer climate, and plenty of liquid water. And I'm not even talking about some tiny puddle. Beaches don't form without a massive body of water. For waves to shape the land like this, there had to be rivers flowing into a vast ocean. Powerful currents had to be moving sand around, and water had to stick around for a long time. This couldn't be just a brief wet spell. It was a period where Mars was hydrologically active for millions of years, potentially being a place where life could have thrived. This discovery gives even more weight to one theory. It has been puzzling scientists since the 1970s. That's when NASA's Viking spacecraft snapped images of what looked like a shoreline wrapping around Mars's northern hemisphere. But there was a problem. The shoreline was all over the place, with elevations varying by up to 6 miles. Wow, which is nothing like our flat, mostly consistent shorelines we see on Earth. This difference made scientists doubt that a Martian ocean ever existed. For years, scientists have been trying to crack this mystery. In 2007, they suggested that Mars' rotation actually shifted billions of years ago. As the planet's massive Tharsis volcanic region grew, the planet's spin axis tilted, warping the surface. It could explain why the shoreline is so uneven today. In other words, what once was a flat and level landscape got distorted over time. Interestingly, Mars has been dropping hints about its watery past for years. Curiosity found ancient ripples in Gale Crater. There were signs of a long-gone lake. Perseverance is currently studying a fossilized river delta in Jezero Crater. Now, with Zhurong's evidence of an ancient ocean, it all comes together. Small lakes? Check. Rivers? Check. A massive ocean covering the northern lowlands? Quite possibly. Zhurong's mission wrapped up in May 2022 after dust blocked its solar panels, but future missions could still explore those ancient shoreline deposits. Scientists might send new missions to drill deeper into the ground to retrieve samples. Or we could use better radar to map Mars' subsurface in more detail. There's a real hope to excavate those areas in the future and find even more clues about Mars' past. At the same time, NASA's Perseverance rover is already working hard in Jezero Crater collecting samples. Scientists hope that it will bring them back to Earth in the 2030s. While those won't include samples from the ancient ocean, they could still help us find out more about Mars's wetter history. For now, the discovery of ancient beaches on Mars gives us a peek into a time when the planet might have looked a lot more like Earth, with water, waves, and rivers. Now let's speak about the Perseverance rover that's still working on Mars in more detail. It has a special drill on its arm and uses it to scrape off the dust and top layers of rock, making small 2-inch wide circles in Jezero Crater. Once, one of its cameras took a close-up photo, and the image showed that the rock wasn't smooth. It was made of tiny interlocking crystals. The rover used 2 special tools to analyze the rock's chemistry. The results confirmed that the rock, named Rochette, was volcanic. It meant it formed from lava or magma, not from mud and clay, like scientists had expected from a former lakebed. Perseverance, also known as Percy, landed on Mars in February 2021, along with a small helicopter named Ingenuity. It is the most advanced rover ever sent to Mars, following in the footsteps of Curiosity, Spirit, Opportunity, and others. But Percy has a different mission. While older rovers mainly studied Martian rocks and climate, Perseverance is searching for signs of past life. Scientists chose Jezero Crater because it looks like it used to be a lake where tiny life forms could have lived. The rover drills, scrapes, and collects rock samples to study with its science tools. It also saves some samples to bring back to Earth in the future for even closer study. Perseverance has found some surprising things on Mars. Scientists studying the data it sent back have discovered that Jezero Crater has changed a lot over time. Long ago, This area had flowing lava, a lake that lasted for thousands of years, rivers that carried mud and sand, and even massive floods that brought in rocks from far away. It means that Jezero's history is more active and unpredictable than scientists expected. This definitely made it harder to find the sedimentary rocks they were looking for. But it has also revealed new places where ancient life might have existed. Another exciting discovery is that every rock Perseverance has studied so far contains carbon-based materials, the same stuff that life on Earth is built from. NASA's Perseverance rover also carries a special tool called MOXIE, which has managed to make oxygen from the carbon dioxide in Mars' atmosphere for the first time. Over 16 test runs, MOXIE produced about 4 ounces of oxygen. That's enough to keep an astronaut breathing for about 4 hours. It worked even better than expected, making up to 0.42 ounces of oxygen per hour. After running successfully for 2 years, MOXIE completed its final test in September 2023. It brings us one step closer to sending humans to Mars in the future. In any case, back to the discovery of ancient shorelines on Mars. This finding might help us see the red planet with new eyes. Water might have been flowing across its surface for tens of millions of years, carving out lakes, rivers, and even a vast ocean. What else have we misunderstood? Did Martian dinos stroll across the vast green valleys of the planet? Or were those bizarre marine creatures the likes of which we can't even imagine? Well, we don't know yet, but one thing is very likely. Mars had an era of warmth, water, and maybe life. In 2025, humans will have a unique opportunity – travel to the Moon. So far, only 12 people have walked on Earth's natural satellite, but a private company is offering tourists a chance to change that. If you are hog-stinky rich, you can pay $750 million to spend several days exploring the Moon and watching Earth from a distance. You can even join unique scientific experiments. Now, humans also want to build their forever homes on the Moon. In fact, NASA believes that North Americans may have their own share of the Moon by 2040. And you don't even need to be an astronaut to buy a plot of land on the Moon. Of course, billionaires are already making plans. Their first idea is to exploit natural resources. The Moon is packed with stuff that is rare here on Earth, like helium-3 and many rare Earth minerals, or more precisely, rare Moon minerals. But I digress. Hey, if you can get your hands on some of it, you may get even richer. First, helium-3. It's great for clean nuclear energy, but it's super rare on Earth because it escapes into space. The Moon, though, has tons of it, enough to power Earth for 1,000 years. Rare Earth minerals are not actually rare on Earth, but they're hard to mine because they react with oxygen. On the Moon, hey, there's no oxygen, so we could easily get loads of these materials to make better tech, like electronics and batteries. Scientists aren't thrilled about this. For the first time, they have a chance to explore 4.5 billion years of space history. Because the Moon's soil has stayed the same for billions of years. Studying its rocks could reveal lots of secrets about the universe's origins. But if billionaires mine the Moon and destroy these rocks, all that knowledge could be lost forever. Another problem with exploring the Moon is the size of it. The Moon is big. But the best spots, the ones with water and sunlight, are limited. Most of the lunar surface is dangerous because of earthquakes or moonquakes, radiation, and meteorites. That means tourists, scientists, and mining companies would be elbowing each other in 3 small regions. The first region is called the Peaks of Eternal Light because there's always sunlight over there, making it a great energy source for telescopes or human colonies. The second spot is the far side of the Moon. Here, radio signals from Earth are not so strong. It's not just peaceful and quiet there. It's also a great place to set up a telescope and study the universe. The third place is called the Pits of Eternal Darkness. It's where all the trolls on social media go on vacation. Nah, it's really because no sunlight reaches that area. This place is even better for scientists because they can use special astronomy tools to study the most distant parts of the universe. This is also where you can find about 1 billion tons of water. If scientists could visit the moon and study it, they would make amazing discoveries. But today, there are no international laws protecting space. No country can own the moon, but this can't stop a private mining company from calling dibs on a particularly good spot. In the past, a bunch of nations signed the Outer Space Treaty, and they agreed that space exploration was supposed to benefit all humankind. But exploring it is not cheap in the first place. Taking a single gallon of water from the moon to the Earth is extraordinarily expensive, and I bet not everyone can afford that. Human activity on the moon is also extremely dangerous because it might change its atmosphere. Now, to understand it better, let's look at the surface of the moon. This floating rock has many craters that have been forming for billions of years. When a meteorite crashes into the moon, fine dust called regolith, with particles so tiny they can cut like glass, rises into the air. This process once created the atmosphere of the moon, and this atmosphere is quite different from the atmosphere of Earth. A big rocket landing on the moon can launch this fine dust into the lunar sky, and the difference here is that the space objects crashing into the lunar surface are actually gentler. A rocket landing is so intense it can increase the number of atoms in the sky 100,000 times. If the number of atoms in the atmosphere grows, the air turns into a dusty plasma. This means that you'll be breathing in air as toxic as the one that poisoned miners in the olden days. Such an atmosphere could end space tourism too, because it makes electronics malfunction and machinery shut down. Well, truth be told, our own presence on the moon is already dangerous. When scientists discovered water on the surface of the moon, they were super excited to study it. This was their chance to understand where this water came from, and even figure out how water appeared on Earth. But when our spacecraft land on the moon, outgassing occurs. This means that the water on the surface evaporates. This evaporated water can contaminate the water on the moon, ruining all scientific data. Because when astronauts take a sample of the lunar water to study it, they will get the water from Earth they have brought along. Bummer, really. And it's not just the water we contaminate, it's everything. A spaceship can carry any living thing from Earth to the moon. It can also bring extraterrestrial life forms back to Earth. This type of contamination is extremely dangerous because it can put human lives at risk. Something similar happened when Europeans were exploring unfamiliar lands they came upon in the Americas. They accidentally introduced new microbes to the natives they met. And since the immune systems of the native population were not used to those new bacteria and viruses, they got sick and worse. At the same time, Europeans also became ill with diseases their bodies didn't know about yet. And even though moon tourism is not happening yet, humans are already littering the lunar highlands like their own backyard. In 2024, an artist named Jeff Koons sent a sculpture to the moon. The sculpture is a transparent box filled with spheres, and it got to the moon thanks to a ride on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. In each sphere, Koons engraved the name of a human he considered super important to humankind, like Aristotle, David Bowie, and Leonardo da Vinci. Thankfully, you don't have to go all the way to the moon to see this sculpture. You can purchase an NFT of each sphere. Or not. Back in 1971, the crew members of Apollo 15 also left a couple of things on the moon. A figure created by a Belgian artist and a commemorative plaque to honor other astronauts who couldn't be there. And it's not just art that humans dumped on the moon. If you take a walk, you might just stumble upon 413,000 pounds of materials left behind, including a gold olive branch, a falcon feather, a silver astronaut pin, a Bible, some golf balls, a hammer, and even leftover urine collection kits. Most of this stuff was left behind by the astronauts that explored space between the 60s and 70s. So you can find moon rangers, lunar probes, and orbiters that are decades old already. Now, to be fair, bringing back unnecessary equipment costs a ton of money. And back in the 60s, their priority was the safety of the astronauts. The sad truth is that the moon is already turning into an extraterrestrial landfill, and we don't even live there yet. But now we want to settle there, so NASA is trying to get rid of all this trash. The good news? Hey, you can be part of this process. The space agency launched a competition called the Lunar Recycle Challenge, and if you want to join it, you must find ways to reduce the amount of litter produced and recycle it into materials that can be used for space exploration. To win, you need to develop a way to completely recycle the trash that is on the surface of the moon. You will help science and win $3 million. And if you get this sum, well, you might finally afford a ticket into space. The red parched earth under your feet is shaking. Large cracks are opening in the ground, threatening to swallow you. But unlike on Earth, these quakes aren't coming from within the planet. A threat coming from space is triggering them. Scientists have made a shocking discovery about Mars quakes. By using AI and NASA's InSight data, they found out that some of those tremors are caused by meteorite impacts. It means that Mars gets hit 2.5 times more often than we thought, and new craters are forming all the time. But the scariest part is that these impacts don't just shake the ground. They send powerful shock waves deep into the planet, revealing a hidden seismic highway and an unstable interior, unlike anything we imagined. This changes everything we thought we knew about Mars. So now, the big question is, what else is lurking beneath the surface? But let's follow scientists' train of thought first. They took Marsquake data from NASA's InSight lander and compared it with fresh impact craters spotted by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. That's when they discovered that some impacts create a seismic highway through the mantle instead of being absorbed by the crust. Even though NASA shut down InSight in 2022, its data is still precious. The lander, which placed a seismometer on Mars, recorded over 1,300 Marsquakes, some caused by underground rock cracking under heat and pressure, others, apparently, by meteoroids slamming into the surface of the red planet. By studying how seismic waves move through the crust, mantle, and core, scientists keep piecing together Mars's deep structure. In the past, researchers already linked impact craters with seismic data. But these new studies are the first time when a fresh impact has been connected to quakes detected in Cerberus fossae. That's a highly active region 1,000 miles away from InSight. Scientists have discovered this 71-foot-wide crater much farther from NASA's InSight lander than expected, if we consider the strength of the seismic waves it produced. Mars's crust was thought to absorb most of the energy from impacts, which would limit how far seismic waves could travel. But the analysis of this crater revealed that, instead of getting dampened, the waves took a more direct and deeper path through the planet's mantle. This unexpected finding suggests that Mars has a seismic highway, which allows quakes to spread much farther than previously believed. Now, the InSight team will need to reassess their models of Mars' internal composition and structure. And then, we might better understand how impact-generated seismic signals can reach such depths. Manually sorting through the vast amount of data would have taken years. But luckily, these days, there are new tools, and scientists can go from tens of thousands of images to just a few in a matter of days. So, researchers focused on finding craters within approximately 1,800 miles of InSight's location. Their aim was to identify those that formed while the lander's seismometer was active. By comparing before and after images from the context camera over time, they identified 123 fresh craters to cross-reference with InSight seismic data. Out of those, 49 craters were potential matches for quakes detected by InSight seismometer. And after conducting some more analysis, the team decided that the 71-foot Cerberus fossae impact crater was the main finding. This discovery is likely to help scientists differentiate between signals from internal quakes and those caused by meteoroid impacts. Initially, they believed that Cerberus fossae produced a lot of high-frequency seismic signals linked to quakes originating inside Mars. But the new data suggests that some of this activity may have been caused by impacts, not internal processes. Another mystery scientists haven't been able to crack for 50 years is why Mars is split into two very different halves. But thanks to recordings of Marsquakes, they may have finally found the answer. Since the 1970s, researchers have known that Mars has two distinct regions. The northern lowlands cover about 2/3 of the planet's northern hemisphere, and the southern highlands make up the rest. The southern highlands sit about 3 miles higher than the northern lowlands, and the crust, the planet's outer layer, like a shell, is thicker in the south. This strange divide is known as the Martian dichotomy. There are two potential explanations for this imbalance. One theory suggests that an unknown internal process within Mars created the difference. The other claims that a massive collision, probably with a moon-sized space rock or several smaller impacts, once reshaped the planet's surface. But Mars' surface is extremely old. That's why pinpointing exactly what happened has been difficult. But now, a new study, published on December 27, 2024, has used Marsquake data from NASA's InSight lander to figure out whether the cause of this difference lies deep inside the planet. InSight was positioned near the boundary between the northern lowlands and southern highlands. Its mission included recording seismic data from Marsquakes, which travel through the planet's mantle, the rock layer beneath the crust. So scientists compared how these waves moved under both lowlands and highlands. They looked for differences in the planet's deep interior. It turns out that the seismic waves lost energy much faster when traveling through the southern highlands. It means that the mantle beneath this region is significantly hotter than in the north. It's compelling evidence that internal planetary forces, rather than an external impact, caused Mars' unusual split. The research team believes that the temperature difference between Mars' two halves can be traced back to ancient tectonic activity. It once shaped the planet but later stopped. At some point in the past, Mars had moving tectonic plates like Earth's. As these plates shifted, they, along with the molten rock beneath them, could have created the Martian dichotomy. But eventually, the movement stopped, leaving behind what scientists call a stagnant lid. That's a thick, immobile layer over the planet's molten interior. If this turns out to be true, it might mean that the mantle beneath the southern highlands is still pushing upward, while the mantle under the northern lowlands is sinking deeper toward the planet's core. This ongoing process could explain why Mars' crust is thicker in the south. At the same time, we can't completely rule out the idea that an external impact created the dichotomy. Some recent studies suggest that a giant collision could still be a possible explanation. To solve this mystery for good, scientists will need more Marsquake data and detailed models of how Mars originally formed. By the way, if you ever decide to visit Mars, you might come across the hero of our video today, the InSight lander itself. It was supposed to launch in March 2016, but a problem with one of its instruments caused a delay. It was a vacuum leak in the seismometer. NASA rescheduled the launch for May 2018, and the issue was fixed in the meantime. But this delay increased the total cost from $675 million to $830 million. Still, InSight successfully landed on Mars on November 26, 2018. But over time, dust built up on its solar panels, making it harder to recharge. The InSight lander runs on solar panels and batteries, but it needs occasional wind gusts, called cleaning events, to clear dust from the panels. Unfortunately, the place where InSight landed didn't get enough of these winds to keep the lander fully powered. By February 2021, during the Martian winter, thick dust had covered the panels, and they were only producing 27% of their full capacity. To save power, NASA started putting InSight into hibernation mode, shutting down instruments gradually to keep its electronics warm. They hoped better weather would allow the lander to recharge and wake up by July 2021. In May 2021, the team found a clever way to restore some power by using the lander's arm to move sand onto the panels, helping the wind clean off some of the dust. But eventually, InSight was only generating 1/10 of the power from the sunlight than it did right upon arrival. In July 2022, NASA put it in low power mode to keep detecting Marsquakes. The lander kept operating until December 2022. On December 20th, NASA announced that InSight had lost contact with Earth on December 15th, and the mission officially ended on December 21st, 2022. A giant is hiding in the sky. Kipu is the biggest thing we've ever found in the nearby universe. It's been messing with our understanding of the universe for years, and we've just discovered it. Kipu is dense, powerful, and dangerous to ignore. If we don't understand structures like this, we might be reading the universe completely wrong. So, what exactly is it? It's not a solid object like a planet or a star, and it's not a single thing. It's a superstructure, basically an entire region of the universe, a tangled mess of matter spanning a huge amount of space stitched together by gravity. Kipu is made up of an enormous web of galaxies, galaxy clusters or giant groups of galaxies, gas and dark matter. It's like a superhighway, with galaxy clusters being the cities, filaments being the roads, and dark matter being the invisible infrastructure holding it all together. This giant stretches across 1.3 billion light-years. That means if you traveled at the speed of light, it would still take you 1,003,000,000 years just to cross it. Kipu also holds 200 quadrillion solar masses, even though it only takes up 13% of the observable universe. The name Kipu comes from the Incan system of knotted cords used to record things, called quipus. It was like a writing system. In that system, each knot, color, and twist told a story, numbers, taxes, harvests, and so on. So, when astronomers saw this colossal structure in space, long, tangled, and branching like space cords, they named it after this language of knots. Plus, the shape of the space reminded scientists of those threads. There's a long central filament, and the smaller ones are branching off the sides. What's even more fascinating, Kipu isn't alone. When scientists mapped this part of the universe, they found 5 of these massive structures. They aren't just sitting there either. They formed over billions of years through gravity slowly pulling matter together. All told, all those giants hold nearly half of all the galaxy clusters in that region, 30% of all the galaxies, and a quarter of all the matter in the observable universe. The team that found Kipu used a clever trick. They searched for X-rays coming from galaxy clusters. These clusters aren't just full of galaxies, they're also filled with superhot gas. That gas is so hot it glows in X-ray light, which we can't see with our eyes, but special telescopes can. If there's a lot of that X-ray glow, it means there's a huge amount of matter, galaxies, gas, and dark matter all pulled together by gravity. That's where the densest, most crowded areas of the universe are. So, by following the X-ray glow, the scientists could draw a map showing where the biggest cosmic structures like Kipu were hiding. Why does any of this matter? Because these megastructures mess with everything. First of all, they warp the cosmic microwave background, the ancient light left over from the Big Bang. It's a faint glow of light that fills the entire universe. After the Big Bang happened and our world was created, it emitted its very first light and signals that still haven't completely weakened yet. The leftover radiation is still coming to us, even after 13.8 billion years. By studying this ancient light, scientists can learn what the early universe looked like, and Kipu ruins it for us. These megastructures hold so much gravity that they bend and distort this ancient light as it passes through them. That's called the integrated Sachs-Wolf effect. These warps add noise to the original signal, and now it's harder for us to get a proper, clearer understanding of what the baby universe looked like and how it expanded. They also mess with the Hubble constant. The universe is constantly expanding, and the Hubble constant tells us how fast it's growing. In other words, how quickly galaxies are moving apart from each other. But giant things in space, like Kipu, have so much gravity that they pull nearby galaxies toward them, messing up the way those galaxies move. This makes it harder for scientists to measure the universe's true speed of expansion. They can't tell if a galaxy is moving because of the universe growing or just because it's being pulled by something huge nearby. And finally, there's gravitational lensing. Light in space travels constantly, but it doesn't always follow a straight line. If the space gets distorted, like by gravity, then the light traveling through the space will get bent and distorted too. Gravitational lensing is when light from faraway galaxies gets bent because it passes by something supermassive, like Kipu here. That huge gravity pulls on the light like how a heavy ball can bend a sheet. And since light delivers information to us, literally makes us see what things look like, this bending distorts how we see galaxies. The images of galaxies end up looking stretched, brighter, or we can even find an entire galaxy in the wrong place. It's like looking at our universe through a warped magnifying glass. If we're not careful, we could misread those distortions and get the wrong idea about what our world looks like. Luckily, we didn't just drop these mysterious superstructures out of nowhere. Astronomers suspected that something like that should be out there. They just didn't know for sure. Our best model for the universe is called Lambda CDM. It says, universe started with the Big Bang, is still expanding, and is mostly made of mysterious stuff, dark energy, and cold dark matter, the CDM part. We can't see or touch these things, but we know they exist, because if they didn't, our universe would literally break apart. This model matches what we do see, like galaxies forming, how stars move, and the overall shape of the universe. So even if some puzzle pieces by themselves are still a mystery, they match the actual picture. And this model actually predicted things like Kipu. When scientists ran simulations using that model, they saw similar structures forming, giant cosmic webs of galaxies tied together by gravity. Kipu matched those predictions in real life. This also means that Lambda CDM is matching real life once again, thank heavens. No huge surprises here. But now that we actually found it, it's the largest known structure in the observable universe. There was another giant before Kipu, the Sloan Great Wall. That one was discovered in 2003 and was believed to be one of the largest structures ever found. And it's still an absolute monster. The Sloan Great Wall stretches over 1 billion light-years across. It's called a wall, but it's not like a wall you'd find on Earth. It's also a vast cosmic web, made up of thousands of galaxies and gas connected by dark matter. What makes both Kipu and the Sloan Great Wall so surprising is that they literally seem too big to exist. According to the Lambda CDM model, structures that huge shouldn't be common, especially at the time they formed. How did these giants form so fast in a universe that's supposed to be growing, expanding, and smoothing over time? And if we keep finding more of them, that would be completely insane. It could mean there's something deeper going on in the way our world is built. It's all part of our crazy Copernican journey, a long series of discoveries where we just keep getting humbled by the universe. Every time we find something like this, we realize even more how we're not the center of everything. First, we learned the Earth wasn't the center of the solar system. Then we found that the solar system is just one speck in a galaxy. Now, even galaxy superclusters, which we believe to be the biggest, are being dwarfed by structures like Kipu and the Sloan Great Wall. But also, these structures won't last forever. Kipu is temporary. Over billions of years, gravity will tear it apart, breaking it into smaller pieces. Some parts will collapse into tighter clusters, others will drift apart. Right now, though, it's one of the most important structures in the known universe. It shapes how galaxies form. It bends light, making it super important for us to decipher. It literally messes with our understanding of the cosmos. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.